So good morning to all of you. So this is M5. When did your batch start? 14th. Fine. So have you had any interaction with any of the faculties from history? Medieval time. Rohan ji would have come. Okay, that makes my task simpler because that means you would have done feudalism. Let's see. Okay. So I'll be taking your modern world history, which would be punctuated across 11 to 12 lectures. Fine. Now, before I start with this portion, modern world history, every subject has certain requirements, or UPSC expects you to prepare a subject in a particular way. And why? Because syllabus is an indicator of the areas which you have to cover. But apart from that, there are multiple ways in which any subject or any content can be prepared. And the reason why all of you are here is because you want to not waste time in this 1 year to cover the syllabus in that way. Now, when we talk about world history or modern world history, why I have written here modern world history is because we are studying the history of the world from a specific time period. It is not just world history, it is the history of the world or the history of modern Europe or the history of Europe from 16th century. Why? Because if you see the syllabus, if had it been world history, then we should have definitely started from Alexander. Means if you have a vague recollection of the Greeks, Romans, Persians, Mesopotamians, but no, we start from a particular time period. So UPSC wants you to focus on the modern aspect. Second thing, I always say this in the first class for all the batches, is that when you start your UPSC preparation, then you have to, before you start learning, you have to unlearn a number of things. What I mean by unlearning is that the type of questions which will be asked, which will be very different from what, even if you are from history background, you would have encountered in your graduation or maybe for few of you post graduation. Till now, the form of learning that we have done is that we have a book, we have a syllabus, and we try to learn from that book, and most of the questions are asked from there. If I talk about social sciences, but in UPSC it is not going to happen. There is, first of all, there is no one book for modern world history. For example, for polity, at least for prelims, you have Lakshmikant, or for modern India, you have 1 or 2 books. For ancient India, you have 1 or 2 books. But let me be honest, for modern world history, there is no one book. And I say this in my optional class also. There is no one book for it. And I believe that the reason why we are here is to reduce our dependence on book learning. Means we don't have time in this 10-11 months to read a number of books. We may have to refer few pages of certain NCERTs, but more than that you don't have. And please do not pick up this habit of reading NCERTs cover to cover, because you may like it, but at the end of the day, you will be wasting a lot of time and your return would be very less. So first thing that you would do today after going back from this class is just have to have a glimpse of the PYQs of GS paper 1 in the last 5-6 years, and you will understand that the questions are very open-ended. Open-ended means they will not ask a question. For example, American Revolution is in your syllabus, so they will not ask a typical question that what were the causes of American Revolution, or what were the causes of French Revolution, or what were the causes of World War I. So the problem today is that people still try to prepare it in a conventional approach, whereas UPSC is, at least from 2019 onwards, has moved ahead. And hence, people say that the paper is tough. It is not tough. The thing is that the approach is wrong. So, in modern world history, you will solely focus on the printed notes, and this is deliberately prepared in line of the class. Now, what I have done is that the reason why I have given you these printed notes in every class, and also on the portal, you will find that handwritten notes are also there. So if anybody wants to just go through my handwritten notes for every chapter, it is there. You will go and see that handwritten notes are also there according to your convenience. In some of the batches I gave handwritten notes, they said, sir, I want printed. I said, fine. Notes is not a problem. The problem or the challenge is to develop a perspective. So coming back to what should be the right approach, they will not ask a question that American Revolution के causes क्या हैं, but they will ask a question that how American Revolution and French Revolution changed the dynamics of international politics and how they shaped up the modern world. Now that is also a question. They had asked a question few years back that how American Revolution was a clash of British mercantilism versus American capitalism. So, or they can ask a question that how after losing the control over 13 American colonies, the British refocused and reoriented their attention in India. What was the impact of American Civil War? What do you understand by balance of power? How the Treaty of Westphalia 1648 led to the rise of modern world politics, international relations. So studying of modern world history is also very, very important because that will give you a very sound understanding of IR. When I will teach Israel-Palestine historical background, then you will understand that why this problem remains unresolved even after almost 60-65 years. In fact, more than that. In fact, I would say 1947, the plan was proposed by UN, 1948 Israel was created, and today we are in 2024, more than 75 years. So you'll have to develop that understanding, number one. Second, you would have noticed in your essay paper from the last 3-4 years that the essay questions are more and more perspective oriented or more philosophy oriented, if you would have seen at least the section A. So earlier this was not the case. Earlier they used to ask questions on contemporary topics, education, women, environment, water. Now they will not ask these type of questions because they have realized that what UPSC students are doing in essay paper is that they are just cramming up all the information that they have collected in their GS 1, 2, 3, 4 and they are putting in the essay. So where is that perspective? Where is the beauty of writing? So they are asking philosophical questions. And that makes it imperative for you that even if you are from mathematics background, you need to have an awareness and at least a sound understanding of the major thinkers of the world. 3-4 years back, I used to never teach thinkers in GS class, never, only in optional classes. Otherwise also, people used to read Rousseau, Karl Marx, John Locke, Montesquieu, Francis Fukuyama, all these thinkers only if they were from political science, history or sociology optional. Some of the people from PubAd used to read Max Weber and others. But now everybody must know about Rousseau. अगर आप नहीं जानते हैं, you are at peril. You cannot beautifully or you cannot do justice to the essay questions. Do not be worried about it. But that is the demand of the examination. They want you to have multiple dimensions. They want you to not only have facts, but they want you to have understanding of the thinkers. When I will reach the rise of, when I will discuss or when we reach the rise of socialism in Europe, then we will understand that how the socialism which was propounded by Karl Marx was interpreted by Lenin, Mao, Nehru, and what was Gandhi's approach on socialism. Something that you read in your DPSP, Gandhian socialism. So I will be very honest in the first class that it is going to be a content rich discussion. We are not here to cover basics. I don't teach NCERTs in the class. Yes, I will go from zero. But the idea is that in these 11-12 lectures, we need to have a certain degree of perfection. Now, another question before that, before moving on to the content, is that people ask that we don't have any background in history. We may have come from, say, science or even from different social sciences. Don't worry about it. UPSC does not expect only people from a certain background to qualify the examination. This time your rank 1 was an electrical engineer. So everybody, mathematician, statistician, people from humanities, everybody qualify the examination. The only thing that you are required to do, not only this modern world history, is to keep your mind open. be aware of the fact that you have come here with a very limited exposure. अगर आपको सब पता होता तो आपको एडमिशन लेने की जरूरत क्या थी? You would have just picked up few books and notes and you would have started preparing. So the reason why you have joined coaching is because you want in this time period of 10-11 months to cover everything from zero to that level. So ये कभी घबराइएगा मत, because in class I will be telling you certain things. तो कई बार क्या होता है, हिस्ट्री लर्निंग इज मोर लाइक पीलिंग एन अनियन. अनियन देखा है? अनियन को अगर आप पील करते रहो तो आफ्टर अ पॉइंट यू हैव नथिंग लेफ्ट. सो हिस्ट्री में भी एक पॉइंट के बाद आपको रुकना है, बिकॉज ऑन एनी इशू यू कैन कीप डाइविंग डीपर एंड डीपर एंड डीपर. तो डेप्थ एंड विड्थ में एक बैलेंस रखना है. वी नीड टू हैव अ बैलेंस बिटवीन डेप्थ एंड विड्थ. We need to go deeper only to the extent where it is required, and then we will move ahead. And remember, your studying of modern world history and your studying of modern India is going to be parallel. Even if I am teaching modern world history, I will always keep referring to modern India. मैं World War I पढ़ाऊंगा, I will tell you Zimmerman plan and the fall of Gadar movement in India. And why I am telling this? Because if you write answers in this way, then you will get above average marks. यहां पूरा competition ही 1 marks का है. Everybody who attempts a 12 marker will get 4.5. But who are going to get a rank are those who will get 5.5 to 6. So इस बात को ध्यान रखिए. Notes content is never going to be an issue. Just keep an open mind, be consistent in the class and try to be alert. So let's start with modern world history. The question is, where do we start from? Because in world history, one challenge is that you are not confined to a country or to a continent. You will keep moving from one country to other country. पहली class में I will be focusing on Italy. In the next class on America, then on France, then on Germany. अब देखिए, your syllabus also moves in this way. So, unlike say rest of history where you have a linear flow, you start from Stone Age to 1947 until 1964-65. You have one country to deal with, that is India, where we are staying. So we know more about India, but we know less about the world. So first thing that I want you to understand is that although we say that we are studying the history of modern world, but basically it is a Eurocentric history. Or we focus, or we have a Eurocentric approach. Eurocentric means that basically you are studying the history of world from the prism of Europe. अब ध्यान से देखिए, you will see. Basically, we are studying the history of the world from the perspective of Europe, or how European countries have shaped the history of the world. सब कुछ आप वहीं से पढ़ते हैं. Renaissance, Enlightenment, French Revolution, even American Revolution is a European phenomena, because we will see that America was a country of settlers from Europe. America में जो लोग हैं आज whites, they are basically people who have come from Europe after Christopher Columbus discovery. German unification, Italian unification, World War I, World War II, Cold War. So the question arises that why there is a distinct Eurocentric approach. Because अगर पढ़ना ही है, if we have to read the history of modern world, then why not from China? Why not from India? Why not from Egypt? So there has to be a reason. Why do we follow this Eurocentric approach? है ना, हम यूरोप से ही क्यों पढ़ते हैं? So there is a reason why we follow a Eurocentric approach. पहला तो definitely there is some historical bias. Historical bias. Historical bias means it is a reality and an established fact. I will prove it to you that the Europeans have tried to over glorify their culture, their history over the rest of the world. They have said that India, Egypt, Africa, China, all of them are backward. That was one of the pretext on which colonialism was based. So there is definitely a historical bias. Europeans have tried to claim the advantage or claim everything that they have given to the world. वो कहते हैं कि उन्होंने ही सब बताया है. But gradually, as we'll read, I will prove to you, and you all know also to some extent, that Indian philosophy or Indian system of sciences was far more superior than them. Then the question arises that why was India colonized by the West? Or why was China under the influence of Western powers, not the other way around? So we'll have to understand that what contributed to the superiority of Europe. Fine, you'll see that. So there is definitely to some extent a historical bias. There is a tendency to over glorify. Second, this is a more valid reason. The more valid reason is that modernity arrived first in Europe. Modernity arrived first in, and that also in Western Europe. Europe में भी आप देखो, you will not read the history of entire Europe. You will be focusing on certain countries in Europe. Like you'll start with Italy, France, Britain, Netherlands, Belgium. Then gradually Spain, Portugal, obviously. So here also we see that modernity arrived first in Western Europe, and then from Western Europe it moved to Central Europe. When? 19th century. I'm writing C is common era. कुछ लोग AD भी लिखते हैं, that is same. 19th century. And then from Central Europe it moved to Eastern Europe. And Eastern Europe in the second half of 19th century. And then gradually in 20th century we see that it moved to, say, colonies or to the rest of the world. We will understand why did colonialism emerge first in Europe. सब बताएंगे आपको, पहले समझिए. So now the next question is, what do you mean by modernity? यहां से शुरू करते हैं. What do you mean by modernity? सोशियोलॉजी में भी यही पढ़ाया जाता है. आप देखोगे that your three subjects are very much interrelated: political science, sociology and history. तीनों में लगभग सिमिलर अप्रोच है. The only thing is that in history we focus on events and issues which have shaped the world. In political science we see the power dynamics, and in sociology we see the social impact of it. So now the first question that arises is that what do you mean by modernity? And then I will tell you how did and why did modernity arrived in Western Europe. कब? 16th century. यहां से शुरू कीजिए. आप देखोगे आपका syllabus, if you see your syllabus, I always say that syllabus gives you an understanding of the overall picture. So syllabus शुरू तो होता है 18th century से. अगर आप देखो पहली चीज लिखी है अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन, then you have French revolution, then industrial revolution. लेकिन वहां से हम नहीं पढ़ेंगे. We will go back थोड़ा सा पीछे. We will start from Renaissance. We will start from the age of geographical discoveries of the world, Reformation. समझ रहे हैं? So basically when we talk about modern world history, so ये शुरू होता है 16th century से. So we start from 16th century. ठीक है? So now the question is, what do you mean by modernity? समझिए आराम से. Everything is mentioned in the handout. We'll try to understand what do you mean by modernity. Yes. Modern क्या होता है? What do you interpret when I say modern? बताइए. Okay. So there are simple ways. Modern means something that is new, different from the traditional or conventional. Modernity basically refers to the change in thought process. It talks about a new setup that emerged in certain communities of the world. A new thought process, soch, vichar, dhara, perspective. Modernity talks about the alteration or the change in consciousness of individuals and communities at large. Now, what is this thought process? What this change was? So we'll see that now the thought process or now the change is mainly based on reason. We'll see rationality, समझ रहे हैं, reason. So we'll see that this change in consciousness was based on reason. Very important force. पहले ऐसा होता था, you can relate also that people accepted what was being dictated to them from top. Society जो कहती थी मान लेते थे, or what the state would say they would accept, what the church would say they would accept. But then gradually we'll see that people have started questioning. है ना, एक समय था when Varna system was sacrosanct in India. There was a time when from the birth people's occupation was fixed in India. था. But gradually as we are moving ahead, we are seeing that we respect institutions. Today also the institution of family remains. Society is there, state is there, religious institutions are there in India and in the West, but we are more individualistic. We have moved ahead. So gradually this change in consciousness has come. And this change in consciousness has brought about changes in politics, in economy, in society, in religion and international relations also. तो ये सारा जो change है, it is not about that कि there was only a हृदय परिवर्तन or a change of heart. It actually brought about changes. So your study of world history is basically about how these changes happened and who were the thinkers and who were the philosophers whose ideas have also contributed to the change. So now the question is that which are the political changes that we have seen, which are the economic changes that we have seen, which are the social changes we have seen, and we are seeing today also. आज भी बदल रहा है. So the period from 16th century to 1950 is called as the rise of modern world. उसके बाद आपके सिलेबस में नहीं है, but for your knowledge, because हम यहां पर थोड़ा सा knowledge के लिए भी आए हैं, apart from clearing this examination. After 1950 we will see the rise of postmodernism. मैं आपको पढ़ाऊंगा what is postmodernism after 1950s. समझ रहे हैं? So now the question is that if we are talking about a change in thought process, then what are the political changes? What do we understand by political modernity? Which are the political ideas? Which are the political ideas that have shaped the modern world? बताइए थोड़ा बहुत. और अब देखिए, these political ideas have emerged in the revolutions. American Revolution, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, इसीलिए आपको पढ़ाया जाता है. So which are the political ideas? Tell me some of them. बोलिए, liberty. Okay, equality is fine. Then, okay, fraternity. Okay, then social contract theory. Yes. I will tell you a more refined form. Social contract theory. We will discuss that one of the political basis for the emergence of modern state was social contract theory. There is a contract between the state and the people. पहले ऐसा कोई contract नहीं होता था. Will of the king is the law of the land. मेरा वचन ही मेरा शासन है. That used to be the norm earlier. Now the states cannot do so. And we will study that there are three main thinkers who have been associated with social contract theory. Can anybody tell me? Thomas Hobbes. We will discuss, don't worry. Then John Locke. Guys, there cannot be any study of modern politics without studying John Locke. John Locke is called as the father of modern liberalism. घबराना नहीं है. You will understand what do you mean by liberalism. John Locke is the father of liberalism. लिख लीजिए साथ साथ में, and keep writing in class because you would have seen that the person who cracked second rank, वो यहीं के स्टूडेंट थे, वो कह रहे थे कि I always used to make my own notes apart from this. Then who is the third person? Rousseau. Had there been no Rousseau, there would have not been a French Revolution, है ना? हम पढ़ेंगे who is Rousseau. So ठीक है, we will see John Locke is associated with liberalism. चलो ठीक है. Then guys, none of you told me nationalism is one of the very interesting and important ways in which states have been formed. Rise of modern nation state. हम पढ़ेंगे rise of nationalism. How India's nationalism is different from the nationalism in many other ways. Nationalism of India is different from nationalism of Bangladesh, is different from nationalism of Pakistan, is different from nationalism of America, is different from nationalism of Germany, is different from nationalism of Japan. So you'll understand what are the different types of nationalism. Nationalism kab aaya? So there are many ways. You see principle of separation of powers. पढ़ते हैं ना Montesquieu. Principle of separation of powers. Fine. Example. बहुत लंबी लिस्ट है. We will not try to cover everything. Political modernity. So what has given rise to political modernity? We will see American Revolution, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, German unification, etc. समझ, इसीलिए आपको पढ़ाया जाता है. That is why these events or these developments are taught to you. Now next question is social modernity. What all changes you see at the societal level? बताइए. हाँ? Secularism and secularization. Secularism and secularization. चलो दोनों में डिफरेंस समझते हैं. What do you mean by secularism and what do you mean by secularization? आराम से बताइए. सेक्युलरिज्म बताइए. ओके ओके. व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय सेक्युलरिज्म? ओके फाइन. सेक्युलरिज्म इज, देखिए यहां पर मैंने, सम ऑफ यू आर आस्किंग व्हाई आई हैव रिटन ऑल दिस, बिकॉज अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन, फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन, रशियन रेवोल्यूशन, दीज ऑल हैव गिवन राइज टू पॉलिटिकल आइडियाज व्हिच हैज शेप्ड द मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड. इसलिए मैंने यहां लिखा. व्हिच आर द आइडियाज वी विल गो व्हेन वी विल गो इन द चैप्टर्स, तब हम देख लेंगे, है ना. बिकॉज टुडे आई एम ऑल्सो गिविंग अ ओवरऑल व्यू ऑफ इट. सेकेंड इज सेक्युलरिज्म. क्या है सेक्युलरिज्म? एक्चुअली डिफाइंस द रिलेशन बिटवीन द स्टेट एंड रिलीजन एंड रिलीजियस इंस्टीट्यूशंस. यहां से शुरू होता है द डेफिनेशन बिटवीन द स्टेट. वी विल सी द राइज ऑफ मॉडर्न सेक्युलर स्टेट अगेन इन द मॉडर्न टाइम्स. पहले ऐसा नहीं था. देयर वाज अ टाइम इन यूरोप व्हेन द चर्च वाज मोर पावरफुल देन इवन द स्टेट. अभी हम देखेंगे ड्यूरिंग द डार्क एजेस चर्च ज्यादा पावरफुल हो गया था. द किंग्स वर वीक एंड वर इन मेनी केसेस डिपेंडेंट अपॉन द विल ऑफ द चर्च. So in the West, the church was very powerful and in many ways used to dictate decisions also. Now, there was also a time, even today we see that there is a concept of theocratic state. सुनाइए, I'll tell you. Theocratic state का मतलब है that once a state, theos word means religion. Theos means religion and cracy means study. जैसे demos means people and cracy means study. Democracy, study of people. So theos means religion. Theocracy means study of religion. Theocratic state is a state which gives preference to a particular religion. Or a theocratic state is a state which declares that this religion is the religion of the state, and the people who are from that religion will always get a number of privileges and preferences. अब पढ़ोगे in your medieval India, was Delhi Sultanate or was the rise of Mughal rule a rise of theism in India or theocratic state in India? Pakistan Islamic State, theocratic. Vatican City. So there was a time when there were theocratic state, when there was a distinct, I would say, biasness or a preference for people of one religion over the others. There was an element of discrimination, है ना? State religion का concept था. But अब आया secularism. Secularism कहता है no state religion. Secularism कहता है no discrimination. यहां से शुरू होता है. No discrimination between people on religious grounds. And then we see that secularism also says, or it defines the relation between state and religious institution. It defines the relation between state and religion or religious institutions. तो ये तो है ही, ये अब आता है इसके बाद. So how many types of secularism are there in the world? There are 3. Western secularism is negative secularism. Indian secularism is positive secularism. And we will study the third, that is Turkish secularism. We'll study Mustafa Kemal Pasha. पढ़ेंगे वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 के बाद. एक आदमी था टर्की में, who is called as the father of modern Turk, है ना, मुस्तफा कमाल पाशा. When you read in modern India, खिलाफत मूवमेंट पढ़ते हो आप, तो आप पढ़ोगे टर्की में मुस्तफा कमाल पाशा. So we will see that there are 3 types of secularism. One is negative secularism, that is in West. France is a beautiful example. What is negative secularism? Complete separation of state and church. Complete separation. तो ऐसा बात इंडिया में क्या है? Why in the West this model was followed? हमेशा याद रखना, in UPSC you should focus on why. So why they have adopted a model of complete separation of church and the state? They have adopted a complete separation of church and state because in the West, the church was I would say, a problem for the state. Church created a lot of hindrance for the state. Church created a lot of, I would say, obstacles for the state. हर जगह चर्च था, अभी दिखेगा आपको. What are the problems associated with the church? So when the state became powerful, उन्होंने चर्च को अलग किया. Their experience with the church was not good, so they wanted to keep religious institutions and religion away from public domain. Do you understand? Why? Because they had seen that when the church had become powerful, what the church did. Church ने क्या क्या परेशानी खड़ी की थी. Whereas in India, where we see positive secularism, in India, where we see positive secularism, we did not have any such problems with, say, the management of temples or management of mosques. In India also, religion was a very dominant feature of public life. ऐसा नहीं है, people were atheists. But we have never seen that interference by the temple complexes or the head of mutt in the political affair. ऐसा कभी हुआ नहीं. You'll read in your ancient India that in South India the temples were temple complexes. बहुत पैसा था उनके पास. So many people used to follow, but political interference कभी नहीं रहा. Or they never tried to interfere in the decision making of the kings or the monarchs. Similarly, in medieval India, you would never see that the head of the mosque is trying to dictate to the sultan or to the emperor, ये करो ये नहीं करो. Advice अलग बात है. So that is why in India, religion is not, or religious institutions are not seen as disintegrative forces. Gandhi कहते हैं, Gandhian ideas have also given rise to the idea of positive secularism. गांधी जी ने कहा था that you cannot separate religion from politics. नेहरू मानते थे वेस्टर्न सेकुलरिज्म को. नेहरू ऑलवेज बिलीव इन दिस आइडिया ऑफ सेपरेटिंग रिलीजन from public domain, because he had seen what religion had done in politics, leading to the partition of India. So he was very much scared when India became independent of bringing religion in public domain. So Nehru was very much influenced by the Western ideas, and he used to say that religion को घर पे रखिए. You can be religious, but there is no role of religion in public domain. Certainly not in politics. But Gandhi कहते हैं नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है. He used to say that number one, religion and religious beliefs have shaped our value system. Value system का मतलब होता है that our conception of right and wrong. So we tend to differentiate between right and wrong in our personal life, also on the basis of religion. ऐसा होता है ना, कई लोग वेजिटेरियन हैं हमारे बीच में. So their religious mindset or their religious thought have dictated that eating of meat is wrong, or you believe in certain ways of doing things. So Gandhi says that individuals' way of thinking and acting is also shaped by religion, and individuals are a part of society, and society is where politics happens. So you cannot keep religion out from public life, because religion shapes our decision making, and decision making is what society is all about. So ये है. So that is why you see that Gandhi ji says that religion का बड़ा important role है. Religion is an integrative force, and also our experience with religious institutions were not bad. तीसरा मॉडल थोड़ा complicated है, we will discuss later, not now. That is Turkish secularism. अभी लिख लीजिए so that which was a part of Kemalism. Mustafa Kemal Pasha. So we have understood what is secularism. Now the question is, what do you mean by secularization? That is important. What do you mean by secularization? बताइए. What do you mean by secularization? It is a process, right? What is this process about? Please write a line. Write a line. Although I think I have given, but I want you to write. Secularization is a process of declining influence. A process of declining influence of religious beliefs, a declining influence of religious beliefs on individual decision making, comma, declining influence of religious beliefs on individual decision making, emancipation of the society from the influence of the church. Full stop. So, secularism is about state and religion. Secularization is about individual and religion. So, secularization is a process where you are religious, but you do not take every decision based on religious beliefs. So you are moving away from being religious dogmatic towards rationality. That is why it is said that the answer to communalism is not only secularism, it is secularization. Secularism तो state का हो गया, secularization तो हमारे level पे है. आप समझ रहे हैं? So this is a process how individuals being religious but will not take every decision and any decision only on the basis of this. एक समय होता था. In India also people would not travel overseas because religion would forbid them to do so. लोग नहीं जाते थे समुद्र यात्रा पे. Now this is not the case. This is called as secularization. So I was telling you that there are ideas which has emerged. Next is rise of humanism. फटाफट करते हैं थोड़ा. Rise of individualism. Humanism, individualism, we will see. Individual rights, humanism we will discuss. So social modernity also talks about the rise of, we will see various types of ideas known as socialism, communism. सुना है? Socialism, communism. What is the difference between socialism and communism? Then what is socialism? Egalitarian society is a society where there is no state. बोलिए. देखिए ठीक है, राइट. कैपिटलिज्म हम समझते हैं. Capitalism is a setup where wealth is concentrated in the hands of the few. हम देखेंगे rise of modern capitalism. Capitalism is a setup where the decision making is by the few who are wealth owners and they want to maximize their wealth, they want to increase their profit. बस यही चल रहा है. And there are many ways of doing so. Trade and commerce, industries, banking, shares, होता है ना. Agriculture is also one of the ways of generating wealth. So gradually what happened in the world, because of more and more wealth generation, only certain sections were benefited, rest remained poor. There was an economic disparity. So in reaction to capitalism emerged a number of ideas how to solve this problem, how to reduce this economic exploitation, and two of the very prominent ideologies are socialism and communism. Socialism and communism. Capitalism का उल्टा आएगा ये, समझ गए? Now I will tell you the core of socialism and communism. हम पढ़ेंगे what are the different types of socialism, ये भी हम देखेंगे. Socialism and communism कहता है that what is in a capitalism, not only there is concentration of wealth in the hands of the few, and these few make all the economic decisions on behalf of the community, but in capitalism there is also a exploitation going on. That is the cause of problem. Exploitation of the poor or the working class by the rich. ठीक. Now Karl Marx एक step आगे जाते हैं. We will discuss Karl Marx. Karl Marx says that why do exploitation happen in a setup? Exploitation, you understand? So then he says that exploitation happens when there is a power divide. Somebody is more powerful than the others, then they can exploit others. तभी तो exploitation हो सकता है, नहीं तो exploitation होगा नहीं. Then the question is that what is the basis of power? है ना? जैसे patriarchy, gender based power divide, men being more at least in a superior position than women, तभी होता है domestic violence. So then the question is, what is the basis of power? Then Marx says that control over economic resources is the basis of power. जिसके पास पैसा है वो पावरफुल है. जिसके पास कंट्रोल ओवर लैंड है, कंट्रोल ओवर फैक्ट्रीज है, दैट इज पावरफुल. So if you want to reduce or if you want to end the exploitation, what you have to change? You have to change the power structure. पावर स्ट्रक्चर को चेंज कीजिए. देन हाउ वुड यू चेंज दैट? ट्रांसफर द कंट्रोल ओवर मींस ऑफ प्रोडक्शन, लैंड, फैक्ट्री, यही करना है. सो उसके लिए दो अल्टरनेटिव्स आए, सोशलिज्म एंड कम्युनिज्म. गॉट इट? सोशलिज्म सेज दैट in socialism is a setup where the control over means of production is like in the case of Marx, he was talking about factories, industries. So the control over factories should be with a state, but that state is a state which is representative of the will of the people. It is working for the people. It is not a authoritative state. But then he says that it is only a transitional stage. एंड गोल ये नहीं है, एंड गोल तो है जब स्टेट भी की जरूरत ना हो. सो मार्क्स सेज दैट दिस इज ओनली अ स्टेप. व्हाट इज द एंड गोल? कम्युनिज्म. कम्युनिज्म इज अ सेटअप where there is no state, where everybody at least has equal say in the management of means of production. Community पूरा डिसीजन लेती है. Entire community takes decision how to produce, what to produce, when to produce. You may not be economically equal, but politically या decision making wise आप बराबर हैं. जैसे पहले ट्राइबल सोसाइटी में होता था, it was a communist setup. So this is the end goal, and this would give rise to an egalitarian society. समझिए, किसी ने एक वर्ड यूज किया, egalitarian. This is an egalitarian setup. Egalitarian का मतलब होता है, it means that setup where there is no exploitation. सब बराबर हैं. Did you understand? So in reality, communism is an ideal. It can never be achieved. Do you think that we can have a setup where everybody can take decisions? No. It can happen at a small level. But ये बहुत prominent, very important idea है. We see social modernity also was about abolition of slavery. हम देखेंगे. Abolition of slavery. We will see social equality. We will see rise of feminism. किसी ने बोला ही नहीं है. अरे egalitarian setup is a setup where everybody is equal. There is no exploitation. Nobody is superior. Nobody is inferior. हम पढ़ते हैं राम राज्य. The concept of राम राज्य is an imagination of egalitarianism. समझ गए आप? So मार्क्स के हिसाब से एंड गोल क्या होगा? Communism. Then everybody will be happy. There will be no exploitation. We will see, guys, the rise of feminism, very important movement in the second half of 19th century. फिर मैं आपसे पूछूंगा इंडिया में फेमिनिस्ट मूवमेंट कभी आया या नहीं आया. We will see. आप समझ रहे हो? So basically you are reading the history of the world, but you are reading so many of the social concepts also. ये sociology में पढ़ते हैं. So now the question is economic modernity. फटाफट कीजिए. We have had a fair bit of understanding. Now we will move fast. Economic modernity. Which are the economic ideas which has shaped the modern world? Capitalism, rise of modern capitalism. Capitalism तो है, but we see various forms of capitalism. हाँ, वो देखेंगे forms of capitalism. Which are the forms of capitalism? Anyone? Crony capitalism is not a form of capitalism. Crony capitalism is a setup where political class and economic class work together. Capitalism क्या है? Capitalism is a setup where we find that there is concentration of the wealth in the hands of the few, and the few are the ones who are taking decisions on the behalf of the entire community. वही powerful है. नहीं. The control over means of production is in the hands of the few. Means of production समझते हो? Which is the generation of resources. जैसे land is also a means of production. Bank is a means of production. है ना? Industries became that. So that is capitalism. And then there are various forms of capitalism. बहुत तरीके से, there are many ways in which, because the purpose of capitalism क्या है? What is the goal of capitalism? Wealth multiplication, profit maximization. कैपिटलिस्ट बस एक ही चीज सोचता है, क्या? 100 का 150, 150 का 250, है ना? वेल्थ मल्टीप्लीकेशन, प्रॉफिट मैक्सिमाइजेशन. सिंपल. उसके बहुत से तरीके हैं. जैसे आज है बिटकॉइंस. किसी ने नहीं सोचा था 50 साल 10 साल पहले भी that there would be a form of currency जो दिखेगा नहीं, but it is a form of wealth, isn't it guys? Nobody had thought, कोई सोचा था ऐसा coin होगा जो दिखेगा नहीं, cryptocurrency. So we'll see what are the various forms of capitalism. One is commercial capitalism, trade and commerce, बहुत common है. Trade and commerce. Commercial capitalism में आप पढ़ोगे there is a form of, this is called as mercantilism. मैं आपको सारे definitions बता दूंगा, don't worry. But we are trying to have an understanding. Mercantilism. Then guys, industrial capitalism, agreed? आपका सिलेबस में है ना इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन. एग्रीकल्चरल कैपिटलिज्म, agricultural revolution, we'll see. Then I will again teach you why India could not witness an agricultural revolution like in Europe. हमेशा इंडिया को लाना पर्सपेक्टिव में, that you will understand. You'll read finance capitalism, that emerged in the second half of 19th century. Finance capitalism मतलब बैंकिंग, शेयर मार्केट्स, बॉन्ड्स, एफडीआई, एफआईआई, यही है ना, पढ़ते हो. So who are the major thinkers whom we should read about when we talk about economic modernity? We'll start with Adam Smith. मैं पढ़ाऊंगा आपको. Adam Smith, the father of modern classical economics. Adam Smith, सुना है नाम? नहीं सुना है तो आज सुन लो, कोई बात नहीं है. That is the beauty of UPSC preparation, that you would every day learn so many things that you may have not learned और आपको याद नहीं है, तो घबराना नहीं है. Adam Smith is called as the father of modern classical economics. Classical economist. Classical economics क्या है ये भी मैं बताता हूं. Classical economics का मतलब है that field of economics which says that price is determined by the equilibrium between supply and demand. वो कहता है कि सब कुछ जो है ऑटोमेटेड प्रोसेस चल रहा है, एवरीथिंग इज नथिंग इज रेगुलेटेड, सब ऑटोमेटिकली. देयर आर सर्टेन यूनिवर्सल लॉज ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स बेस्ड ऑन विच इकोनॉमी प्रिवेल्स. आप पढ़ोगे इन इकोनॉमिक्स सप्लाई, डिमांड, प्राइस. ही वॉज द पर्सन हु वॉज क्रिटिकल ऑफ मर्केंटिलिज्म. इन्होंने एक बहुत फेमस किताब लिखी थी एंड द नेम ऑफ द बुक इज An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations. इन्होंने, he was critical of mercantilism. We will understand what is mercantilism. And he had written a book. In his book, and what is the name of the book? An Inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. 1776. An Inquiry. इस बुक को फेमसली वेल्थ ऑफ नेशंस भी कहा जाता है, बट दिस इज द फुल नेम ऑफ द बुक. An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations. And he, in this book, had given the idea of laissez-faire. सुना है ये? Free market economy. There should be no state interference. State has no business in business. Free market economy. State should not regulate. State को अलग रहना चाहिए. समझ गए? We will see rise of free market economy. America is an example of, to a large extent. We will read another thinker, not very famous but important, David Ricardo. आप मॉडर्न इंडिया में पढ़ोगे रैयतवारी सेटलमेंट. डेविड रिकार्डो, ठीक है, थियरी ऑफ रेंट. सो इसीलिए मैं कहता हूं कि मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री जब आप पढ़ते हो, you'll read about so many thinkers and how events of the world are interlinked. समझ रहे हो? What is happening in America and what is happening in France, कैसे relation है? What is happening in these two places and what is their relation with India, कैसे related है? And what are the basis of emergence of these ideas? And there cannot be any study of the history of modern world economy without studying the critique of it, Karl Marx. कहते हैं you can like Marx, you can dislike Marx, but you cannot ignore Marx. पूरी हिस्ट्री ऑफ द वर्ल्ड आप पढ़ ही नहीं सकते अगर आपने कार्ल मार्क्स को नहीं पढ़ा. जैसे यू कैन नॉट रीड द हिस्ट्री ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडिया विदाउट स्टडिंग गौतम बुद्ध. यू कैन नॉट स्टडी द हिस्ट्री ऑफ मॉडर्न इंडिया विदाउट स्टडिंग सुभाष चंद्र बोस एंड गांधी. सो दैट ऑल्सो मैं आपको बता दूंगा हाउ सुभाष व्यू ऑफ सोशलिज्म वॉज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम दैट ऑफ गांधी जी, वॉज बोरोड फ्रॉम दैट ऑफ लेनिन. माओ कौन है, समझ रहे हैं? सो ठीक है. सो यू विल अंडरस्टैंड कार्ल मार्क्स ऑल्सो. सो वी विल सी दैट देर आर मेनी रेवोल्यूशंस. लेज़र-फेयर मीन्स फ्री मार्केट इकोनॉमी, समझ रहे हैं? फ्री मार्केट इकोनॉमी मीन्स नो इंटरफेरेंस बाय द स्टेट इन दिस. तो बेसिकली आपका सिलेबस यही है. योर सिलेबस इज दिस, बट इंस्टेड ऑफ डूइंग इन दिस वे इट हैज गिवन यू एन इवेंट सेंट्रिक अप्रोच. आपको बोल दिया आप अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन पढ़ो, then you'll read about all these ideas. आपको बोला आप इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन पढ़ो, then you'll read about it. आपको बोला आप एग्रीकल्चरल रेवोल्यूशन पढ़ो ये. And let me tell you one very simple line. I was reading a book, Henry Kissinger's World Order, that the history of the world is basically a history of power struggle. Basically आप सिंपल एक लाइन में क्या पढ़ते हो? If anybody asks you that what are you reading, you are basically reading how power is shifting from one state to other state. We are studying a history of shifting balance of power. है ना? कैसे balance of power shift होता है? Basically we are doing that. So if we start with it, so 16th century से शुरू करना है. So we start from 16th century, the history of modern Europe. उसमें भी which part of Europe? वेस्टर्न यूरोप. यहां से शुरू करना है. फ्रॉम हियर वी विल सी. बट थोड़ा और पीछे चलते हैं, बिकॉज आई ऑलवेज वॉन्ट यू टू हैव अ कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव अंडरस्टैंडिंग दैट इंस्टेड ऑफ रॉट लर्निंग आपको पता हो कि कैसे चीजें इवॉल्व हुई. सो इसके पहले आता है 15th सेंचुरी. 15th सेंचुरी इज कॉल्ड एज द एज ऑफ ट्रांजिशन. Fifteenth century is called as the age of transition. Transition from medieval Europe to modern Europe. क्योंकि ऐसा कभी नहीं होता है कि आज तक medieval Europe और कल से modern Europe, अगले दिन सुबह उठे और आज से modern Europe. नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होता. It never happens. For example, in India, अब देखो in India also, when you study Indian history, ancient India from the Stone Age to 750 to the establishment of Delhi Sultanate is early medieval India. पढ़ते हो आप? Where we see the distinct feature was land-based economy, feudalism. Then from Delhi Sultanate 1206 to the death of Aurangzeb, or some say Battle of Plassey, is medieval India. और फिर modern India आता है. But medieval India से modern India, the shift did not happen overnight. It happened in a gradual way. And that is why in Indian history, you read 18th century was the century of transition, where you see decline of Mughals, rise of regional powers, and eventually the rise of British. So Europe may be 15th century is the century of transition, where you will see that in this transition from medieval Europe to modern Europe, how this happened, ये सब समझ जाएंगे. So what all major developments we saw, we will see the rise of Renaissance. We will understand what is Renaissance. We will see the beginning of, और beginning छोड़िए, लिखिए age of discoveries. Age of discovery means they will try to find out new sea trade routes to the east. हम देखेंगे वास्को डगामा, बार्थोलोम्यू डियाज, मैगेलन, क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस, है ना, दुनिया की खोज में निकले थे.
We'll see that. Why? We'll see why this. इसके पहले we'll see that 14th century is called as the century of crisis. Century of crisis. बहुत से प्रॉब्लम्स आए थे इन सर्टेन पॉकेट्स ऑफ यूरोप. एंड देन फ्रॉम 14th सेंचुरी से लेके 5th सेंचुरी, this period in Europe is medieval Europe. Or it is also called as Middle Ages. मिडिल, एंशियंट एंड मॉडर्न के बीच में. ठीक है. This period in Europe was also known by another name that is called as Dark Ages in Europe. We'll read. Dark Ages. Why it was called as Dark Ages? What are the problems associated with the Dark Ages? अभी हम देखते हैं. But from the name itself, we have a fair clue that when we call anything as the Dark Age, means it was a period of problems. And you see what a contrast. When we talk about the Dark Ages, this was the period when in the beginning of the Dark Ages, we had a golden age in India. Age of Guptas. Then we see that after the Guptas, the politics of India shifted to the south of Vindhyas, Chalukyas or Badami, Pallavas, Cholas, पढ़ते हैं आप? And then in North India, after a period of early medieval ended, we see the rise of Delhi Sultanate. तो जब यूरोप में डार्क एजेस था, India had a very good time, politically, economically, culturally, है ना? So we will focus again on Europe. That this was the period of dark ages in Europe. This term dark age, देखिए most of the चीजें I'm not dictating is because most of the things are written in the handout. Yesterday I just sat to prepare it in a way so that आप क्लास में समझ लें and उसके बाद आप जाके एक बार पढ़ लो. You will know everything. So this term dark age was actually coined by a famous Italian scholar whose name was Francesco Petrarch. Francesco Petrarch said that this was a dark age, and not only he, but many other scholars of the period of Renaissance have called it a dark age because, according to them, during dark ages there was limited or no intellectual development. During this dark age, there was prevalence of superstitions, people believed everything that the church said. Religion dominated. Everything was dominated by the church. Dark magic, ये सारी चीजें होती थी. Witchcraft. So we see that there was no intellectual development, no cultural development that happened. So we see that there was superstition, belief in dark magic, etc. Society backward हो गया था. Now this is one way of understanding, but there are other problems also associated with the dark ages. सिर्फ इसीलिए नहीं कहा जाता है. So why they have called it a dark age is because after this there was Renaissance, and before this there was the period of Romans and Greeks. So they say कि इसके पहले भी अच्छा था, इसके बाद भी अच्छा है, but this was the time which was an unfortunate period in European history. Europe witnessed its darkest chapter in these 6, 7, 8, 9 centuries. 900 साल बहुत बुरी हालत रही. So before the dark ages, इसके पहले we'll see ancient Europe. ठीक है, बहुत पीछे नहीं जाएंगे, but we will have an understanding. This period was also called as a classical age. Classical age. Classical का मतलब क्या होता है? What do you understand by classical? Something which sets the standard. जैसे आप पढ़ते हो that in India there are so many dances, but out of which 7-8 are classical dances, standard form. Gupta age is also called as the age of classical development in the field of literature, architecture. So they used to call the ancient times as classical past, especially because they used to talk about the ancient Greek, और उसके बाद आए Romans, Roman culture. So यूरोप में दो कल्चर का बहुत डोमिनेंस है. जैसे इन इंडिया ऑल्सो वी हैव टू प्रोमिनेंट कल्चर्स. इन द नॉर्थ इट वॉज संस्कृत, इन द साउथ इट वॉज तमिल. फिर वहां से रीजनल कल्चर्स आए. यूल रीड द राइज ऑफ रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस फ्रॉम अपभ्रंश. यहां पर वैसे ही है दो कल्चर. सो द क्वेश्चन इज दैट इफ एवरीथिंग वॉज सो गुड इन द पास्ट, हाउ डिड दिस डार्क एज बिगिन, एंड देन व्हाट वर द प्रॉब्लम्स इन द डार्क एज, and how did Europe come out from the dark age? ये सारी चीजें समझनी है. If there was dark age, अगर इतना प्रॉब्लम था, then how did they come out so strong that gradually they would end up dominating the entire world? So पूरी कहानी शुरू होती है with the fall of Roman Empire. The entire story starts from, if you have to tell you that what is the zero of your modern world history, then the zero of modern world history starts from here, the fall of Roman Empire. In the West, West का मतलब है Central and Western Europe. The fall of Roman Empire. ठीक है, थोड़ा बहुत देखते हैं and then we will move ahead. What is the impact of the fall of Roman Empire? देखिए, you also have a map. You can also work with me on this. Page number 13, guys. And for online students, घबराइए मत. The annotated maps will be uploaded on the portal. Annotated means whatever I work here, किसी भी मैप में मैं यहां काम करता हूं, ये पोर्टल पे उसी दिन अपलोड हो जाता है. So that for your reference it is there, marked map. ठीक है. So देखिए ये है, this is the Roman Empire at its peak, पूरा. This is the Roman Empire at its peak, entire blue and red. समझ में आ गया? This is the Roman Empire at its peak. The Roman Empire, if you see with its capital at Rome, initial capital was ठीक है. नाउ देखिए, we'll see what is Renaissance. पहले समझिए. It has been a common problem for any major empire or large empire is the difficulty of administration. किसी भी empire में यह problem रहा है. It has been a common case with any major empire is that a large empire is very difficult to administer by a single ruler. You see, that has been the case with Mauryas. That has been the case with Guptas, that has been the case with Mughals. So in the Romans also, the Roman emperors, they realized that the culture that prevails, because आप Roman Empire देखो, then parts of North Africa, most of this Western Europe, अब मैं Western Europe की जब when I'm talking about this is Western Europe guys, and some part of Eastern Europe. तो यहां पर क्या है फिर? Question is what is here? So here there was no kingdom, it was a tribal communities were there. छोटे छोटे tribes थे यहाँ पे. So the Roman kings realized that there is a difference in the culture of this part of the empire and this part. So gradually what happened that the Roman Empire was divided into two halves. लगभग the Roman Empire was divided into two half. मतलब not a straight line, but they divided. And from 330 AD और 330 C एक अलग एम्पायर आया, अ पार्ट ऑफ द रोमन एम्पायर. रोमन एम्पायर का दो भाग हुआ, ईस्टर्न रोमन एम्पायर एंड वेस्टर्न रोमन एम्पायर. ईस्टर्न रोमन एम्पायर was famously called as, anyone? The Byzantines. This was called as the Byzantine Empire. ठीक है. Why? Because they found it difficult to administer such a vast empire. जैसे you'll read in your ancient India, after the death of Ashok, the Mauryan Empire was divided into two half between Dashrath and Kunal. पढ़ोगे? Many times it has happened. So the Roman Empire, this side was continued to be called as the Roman Empire. ठीक है. Now in the Byzantine Empire, there emerged a very popular king who established a new capital and made it the center of culture, like Rome was the center of culture in the West. That person was called as Constantine. And after him, the capital was later renamed as Constantinople. So you'll see here is Constantinople, which is today called as Istanbul. Now gradually, now we will see that in the Roman Empire there are two halves, western half and eastern half. In the Byzantine Empire, the Greek culture was more dominant. Why? Because the Byzantine king or the Byzantine Empire, the Byzantine kingdom is closer to Greece. Greece यहाँ पर है. Before the Romans in Europe, there was a Greek empire, Alexander and his forefathers. So in this part of Europe, Greek culture was more dominant and people readily adopted Greek language. Whereas in this part, which language was adopted? Latin. So Latin culture was more dominant. So not only on the grounds of administration or difficulty of administration, but also because there was different cultures in the same Roman Empire, they had created a division. उन्होंने दो भाग में तोड़ दिया था. ठीक है. So gradually there was different setup emerging. अब हुआ ये that the Roman Empire from the beginning also had been facing challenges. And what was the challenge is because Roman Empire में बहुत पैसा था. There was a lot of wealth. There was a lot of prosperity in the Roman Empire. And that is why the tribes of the nearby or the neighboring region always wanted to loot and capture. So one of the challenges which all the Roman emperors have faced is of recurring tribal invasion. यहाँ से हमेशा we'll see tribal invasions. A number of tribes like Goth, Germanic tribes, like Vikings, समझ रहे हैं? ये हमेशा अटैक करते रहते थे. Why? Loot and plunder, लूट मार के लिए. That is why you will read or you would have seen in movies also that most of the prominent Roman kings वो अपना पूरा लाइफ कैपिटल में नहीं बॉर्डर पे स्पेंड करते थे. That if you see the life of Roman kings, Julius Caesar का नाम तो सुना होगा. Julius Caesar spent 25 years of his, monarchical reign not in the capital but at the border. You will read Marcus Aurelius, मतलब सुना होगा कई मूवीज में कई बार आ जाता है रेफरेंस. So that therefore as long as the Roman emperors were powerful, brave, and they wanted to serve the state well at the border, Roman Empire was safe. Because any great kingdom is dependent upon the strength of the ruler. राजा मजबूत रहेगा तो फिर सब ठीक है. Why did the Mughals fail? Because of the weak successors of Aurangzeb. Why did the Mauryas fail? Because of the weak successors of Ashok. Why did the Guptas fail? Because of the weak successors of Skandagupta. हमेशा रहा है. It is a common phenomena. So problem is that after a moment of time, the Roman emperors, they neglected the border to the generals and started enjoying a life of luxury in capital. आपने देखा होगा, or you would know that there were great Roman architecture, all types of wealth was there, and when they neglected, तो फिर क्या होगा? What would happen? The tribes would start entering, अंदर आना जाए शुरू हो जाएंगे. And when a king is weak, then the generals and the people of court, they start interfering in the political decision making. So that is why the Roman Empire fell in the West. यहां पर फिर भी मामला ठीक है. They are also facing attack, but here the attacks are less. Why? Because पूरा पैसा इधर था ज्यादा, and here the kings were comparatively more capable. So the Byzantine Empire did not fall, but which empire fell? Roman Empire. And what happened is that after the fall of Roman Empire, we see that Roman Empire fragmented, टूट गया. When the last Roman king was murdered, and then the empire fell into small parts. ऐसा ही होता है, राजा को मार करके जनरल्स आपस में बांट लेते हैं. So we see after the fall of Roman Empire, the rise of fragmented polity. कहीं पर लिख लीजिए. Fragmented polity means, fragmented समझ रहे हैं आप? Broken up. You see, like after the fall of Mauryas, rise of fragmented polity, Shungas, Kanvas, उसके बाद छोटे छोटे. And what happened in this fragmented polity? जैसे छोटे छोटे राज्य बन गए. We see smaller kingdoms. Got it, guys? So we see that these smaller kingdoms were constantly at war with each other. ये आपस में लड़ रहे थे. Why? Because they wanted to capture each other's territory. होगा, common है. So during the time of Roman Empire, there was political stability. But after the fall of Roman Empire, there was political instability. There was political instability in the West. In the East, the situation is comparatively better. It is still stable. Now, this started from 5th century. Meanwhile, something is also going to happen in this part. Here we will see Arab Peninsula, है ना? Here we will see Arab Peninsula. Can you imagine? So we will see that a new religion will emerge in 7th century. What is that religion? Islam. Prophet Muhammad Sahab was born in 570 CE. ठीक है? So we'll see the rise of Islam in 7th century. And the teachings of Prophet Muhammad became very, very popular. Rise of Islam. कहां पे? इस पेनिनसुला में, अरब पेनिनसुला. Where is the peninsula? Now what happened? That Islam or the followers of Islam, because before the rise of Islam in Central Asia and Middle East, जो आज आप देख रहे हैं Islamic countries, वहां पे इस्लाम से पहले क्या था? What was the religion or what was the belief system of the people? Tribal religions were there. छोटे छोटे tribal religions थे. So what happened? That the tribes were Islamized or they adopted Islam. Now the question is, why did people adopt Islam? Because Islam talks about uniformity and equality, brotherhood. Islam सबको एक तरह से देखता है. There is no distinction between the rich and the poor, between the politically powerful and the less powerful. So Islam popular बनने लगा. And gradually what happened? That the followers of Islam started expanding the territories. They wanted to spread Islam, and they said that it is our holy duty to free the land from the kafir. Islam, the followers of Islam, consider the people who are followers of Christianity as kafir. समझिए आप, मैं आपको एक लाइन लिखा दूंगा. So what happened is that after the rise of Islam, Islam started expanding in these directions. Idhar aane laga. They started attacking the Byzantine ruler, and they also started moving in all these territories. यहां पे धीरे धीरे जो ट्राइब्स थे, they started converting to Islam. Conversions हो रहा था. We'll see why there is so much of dispute between Islam and Christianity. अभी मैं बताता हूं. Give me 5 minutes. So what we see, the rise of Islam and its gradual expansion in Central Asia, Middle East. This is Middle East region. Middle East, North Africa. We see religious conversions happening. People are converting to Islam. More and more tribes have converted to Islam. उसी समय there was a tribe here. That tribe was called as Moors. क्या tribe है? Moors. Moors you find are as a tribal population whom you will find in Morocco region. विलियम शेक्सपियर का एक नॉवल आया था, वेरी फेमस ड्रामा ओथेलो, सुना है, जिसपे ओमकारा मूवी बनी है. सो दैट पर्सन ओथेलो वाज अ मूर. सो व्हाट हैपेंड, द मूर्स, उनको पैसा दिख रहा था, स्टिल देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ वेल्थ इन द अदर पार्ट ऑफ द सी. सो दे क्रॉस्ड द स्ट्रेट. विच स्ट्रेट इज हियर? द मूर्स क्रॉस्ड द स्ट्रेट ऑफ जिब्राल्टर एंड कैप्चर्ड, Moors captured, यहां पे मार्क कर लो, a part of Iberian Peninsula. I repeat, we see the rise of Islam and gradually more and more tribes are converting to Islam and in the name of jihad. अब ये बड़ा ही misinterpreted term है कि जिहाद का मतलब क्या है. Now let me tell you that Prophet Muhammad had said that jihad means that it is the holy duty of every Muslim to spread the message of Allah. But he never justified violence in the name of jihad. It is your holy mission to spread the message of Allah which has been conveyed to me by an angel Gabriel. मेरे को अल्लाह ने किसी के थ्रू मैसेज भिजवाया and I am spreading to you और आप आगे पहुंचाओ. इस मिशन को कहते हैं जिहाद. But unfortunately, jihad has been given a territorial color. It has justified territorial expansion and wars. In the zeal matlab in the passion of expanding Islam, they started considering everybody who is un-Islamic as non-believer or enemies of Islam. Zyada hi josh tha. And because of which we will see so many conflicts. So what happened is that gradually people started adopting Islam. And then there was a tribe called as Moors, and that tribe, that was a very violent tribe, it crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and it captured a part of this peninsula. Guys, this peninsula is famously called as, I'm writing here, Iberian Peninsula. Spain and Portugal are a part of it. Iberian Peninsula. Thick. So what we have seen is that the Roman Empire, means I'm talking about this Roman Empire, जब मैं कह रहा हूं ये part, the Roman Empire is facing a lot of problems after 5th century, political instability, wars, and now they see a new challenge from 7th century, that is the rise of hostile tribes or hostile people of different religion. Arabs ने ये पूरा land capture कर लिया. This entire region was captured by the Arabs. This entire shaded region was captured by the Arabs. And not only the Arabs captured the region, इन्होंने trade route बंद कर दिया. The Arabs blocked the trade route between the west and the east. What is the trade route I am talking about? आपने सुना होगा, you would have heard that India को सोने की चिड़िया कहते हैं. Where did so much of gold come in India? कहां से आया? What was the major source of gold in India? From the Romans. There was in the post-Mauryan time, there was a trade that was a very prominent trade, that is Indo-Roman trade. आप पढ़ते हो. in the post-Mauryan times there was a Indo-Roman trade. इंडिया से रोमन एम्पायर की तरफ क्या जाता था? Spices, mostly spices. Yes, there was cotton and other things, but what was in huge demand? Spices. Some spices were grown in India, like cardamom, cinnamon, but many of the spices were actually brought to India from Southeast Asia. Like there was a spice which was famously called as black gold. What was that spice? Black pepper, kali mirch. So Western people were very fond of the spices क्योंकि spice का क्या property है? It not only makes the food tastier, but it is also used for preservation of food. है ना? आज भी कई बार if you know हम marinate करके छोड़ देते हैं. So spices used to go to the West, and how did they pay for the spices? Gold coins. And gold आता था, and these gold coins which used to arrive in India via the sea route. अब पढ़ते हो भरूच in Gujarat, Muziris in Kerala, है ना? So gold coins in North India were melted and reissued by the rulers like Kushan, Kanishk, Guptas. In South India at that time there was no prominent state, so the gold was preserved and hoarded by the people and traders. लोग अपने घर में pots में gold छुपाने लगे. बाद में this Roman trade had stopped. So the major source of supply of gold had stopped. That is why you read that in the later part of Gupta region or Gupta Empire, the issuing or the number of gold coins reduced. पढ़ते हो? It reduced. In fact, overall coinage reduced. That was one of the major sources. Yes, Central Asia से भी आता था. I am not saying it did not come from Central Asia, but the Roman was there. Now the question is, what was the trade route? किधर से आता था? No, it was the Mediterranean route. किसने कह दिया आपको सिल्क रूट? ये this was the route from where it used to come majorly. Mediterranean Sea है यहां पे. Can you recall? थोड़ा सा दिमाग में लगाओ. Mediterranean Sea, and then via Mediterranean Sea, चलिए मैं दिखाता हूं आपको दूसरा. चलिए ठीक है, कोई नहीं. You are aware what is the route I am talking about? आपको ध्यान है थोड़ा what route I am talking about? So here we have the, isn't guys? So here we are via the Sinai Peninsula. यहां पे है आपका अफ्रीका. So via the Red Sea they used to come. This is the route. And here we have the Mediterranean region, and here we have Italy. ऐसे जाता था. And yes, you are right, there was another route we'll discuss in some time, that is the Silk Route. ये छोड़िए अभी. So this was the major route. Now what happened? We have read that this entire region was captured by whom? Arabs. So Arabs ने ये सारा capture कर लिया है, and they have blocked the trade route to the east. So suddenly what happened is that Suez Canal बाद में आया. There was no Suez Canal. There was a land. So they used to take a land route and then come. Red Sea was a very prominent. आप पढ़ोगे in ancient India that there is a very famous book, Periplus of Erythraean Sea. Red Sea को उस समय Erythraean Sea बोलते थे. तो Red Sea was a major trade route. Red Sea से आते थे. There used to be trade. Now what happened? That trade was stopped. Trade बंद हो गया. So there are more problems for the people or for the rulers in the West, because trade was the basis also for generation of cash. Now suddenly, because of the decline of long distance trade and commerce with the East, cash has declined. But the problem is that they need cash. क्यों चाहिए cash? Because they are fighting wars. They are fighting wars, but they don't have cash. So suddenly, when they don't have cash, they would come up with a solution that they would start giving control over certain pockets of land to lords, who in return will fight for them. This system gave rise to what we call as feudalism. Simple. So we read that after the fall of Roman Empire, क्या क्या देखा हमने? There was fragmented polity. ठीक है, there was political instability, we have seen the rise of Islam, we see the decline of trade with the eastern world. What was that called as? Oriental world. याद रखिएगा. In Europe, people had devised a term, Orient and Occidental world. So they used to say that this part of the world is Oriental world. Orient का मतलब होता है old. This was a term which Europeans had given later for Eastern world. Eastern world means Asia, and even for Africa they used to say this. Oriental world, backward, when they had emerged as colonial power. So India, Southeast Asia is सबको Oriental world कहते हैं. So because there was decline of trade with the Oriental world, this gave rise to what? What did emerge in Europe? Feudalism emerged in Europe. Feudalism emerged in Europe. So you'll see the rise of feudalism in Europe from 8th century to आप लिख सकते हो 14th, 15th, उसके बाद भी था, ऐसा नहीं है कि it declined suddenly. In many parts of Europe, feudalism remained even after 14th century. But we see the rise of feudalism. So ये सब हम पढ़ रहे हैं dark ages में. We are seeing all these problems. Now I am sure you have read feudalism, आपने पढ़ रखा है, so I am not getting into that. एक question लिखो and try to attempt the question and show it to me in the next class. I am sure आपने ये question सुना होगा or you would have at least read. Differentiate between Indian feudalism and Western feudalism. Done? Differentiate between Indian feudalism and Western feudalism and account for the rise and fall of the both. Differentiate between Western feudalism and Indian feudalism and account for the rise and fall of the both. How did Indian feudalism rise? How did it fall? Why did Western feudalism rise and how did it fall? We'll see. So I'll answer a number of that, don't worry. So what we do is that you keep on writing answers. I'll be giving you questions in every class. And whenever you have time, show it to me. Online students can email me. Don't worry, I will check it. Fine. So feudalism तो आपने पढ़ रखा है. You have read feudalism? I think you have read early medieval India. So tell me what are the problems with feudalism? Feudalism is associated with exploitation of peasants. पढ़ा है? Feudalism is associated with exploitation of peasants, especially serfs. पढ़ते हो ना? Who are the most exploited sections? Serfs. Fine. Feudalism is associated with the rise or decline of trade. बताइए. Feudalism जहां होगा, trade and commerce will flourish or decline. Why? Because feudalism is a closed setup. है ना, पढ़ते हैं आप. Feudalism is a closed agrarian or agricultural economy. That is why feudalism is associated with trade anemia. I hope you understand anemia. Feudalism, wherever feudalism will be there, urbanization will be more or less. सोचिए. Urbanization was also linked with trade and commerce. Agricultural economy है तो it will be a village economy or urban economy. Village. So that is why many proponents of feudalism has said that whenever feudalism will be stronger, urbanization will be on a decline. So feudalism was also associated with de-urbanization. Feudalism was associated with de-urbanization. And during feudalism, we see the decline of traders, merchants, and we see the overall class which suffered was middle class. ये बहुत कम हो गया. So in a feudal setup, we see that there is a feudal lord and there are different class of peasants. So this was the problem associated with feudalization. We see that Europe was experiencing a feudal phase. So we are seeing what are the problems associated with dark ages. So we are seeing that feudalism was one of the problems, or it is a feature of it. Now this was also the period when we see that climatic factors were also not in favor of Europe. So बहुत से problems है. There are multiple reasons why Europe was facing so many problems. One of the phenomena is called as geographical determinism. Geographical determinism is a theory, समझिए, जो कहता है that geographical factors or climatic factors have also played a very important role in human history or in shaping human behavior. मानते हैं आप? Geography का भी बहुत important role है. As you will read more and more of geography, world geography, or even Indian geography, you will understand that how our culture is also shaped by geography. मैं आपको एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल देता हूं, अभी आप समझ जाओगे. आपने कभी ट्राइबल डांस देखा है? हाउ दे डांस, मतलब पूरा हाथ पैर फेंक करके दे डांस. एंड हैव यू सीन हाउ पीपल इन मेडिटेरेनियन कंट्रीज डांस? क्योंकि वेस्ट में बहुत ठंड पड़ती थी, सो हैंड मूवमेंट एंड फीट मूवमेंट वाज रेस्ट्रिक्टेड. ठंड लगती थी ऐसे, सो डांस भी ऐसे ही करेंगे. और अगर आप देखो इन ट्रॉपिकल कंट्रीज जहां बहुत गर्मी है, तो लोग हाथ ऐसे खोल के चलते हैं, तो डांस भी वैसे ही होगा. फूड हैबिट्स देखो. So this is a very famous, interesting theory. Geography also helps us to understand that how human society and human behavior has changed. I'll give you another example. You'll read that in ancient India, आपको पढ़ाया जाएगा that around 10,000 BC there was a change, major climatic change, that is from Pleistocene to Holocene, from Ice Age to warm phase, and that was responsible for the beginning of agriculture. So whenever we will try to read any area, we will also bring geography into picture. मैं आपको जब रशियन हिस्ट्री पढ़ाऊंगा, then I will tell you why Vladimir Putin is so insecure about the West. Geography also gives us a very interesting view of the history of the world. How America emerged within our century as a very powerful state. Geography has also played a very important role. So guys, we'll see that there were difficult climatic conditions. Geographical determinism theory. Difficult climatic conditions. In Europe, especially during 5th to say 9th or 10th century. दोनों में से कुछ भी लिख लो. This was the period where we'll see that there was prolonged winters, average temperature was low. We'll see 4 to 5 months of sunshine. We'll see that dense forests were there. In detail, it is given in your handout. I am explaining you the analytical part. So overall, what happened? Because of dense forest, there was limited agricultural land. और ठंड बहुत पड़ रही थी. So they could actually grow crops only for 4-5 months. उससे ज्यादा नहीं कर पाते थे. Temperature was mostly on the lower side. And because of all this, they had a 2-crop system. They had 2-crop system. Soil fertility was low. Low soil fertility due to a phenomena known as permafrost. देखिए मैं आपको फिर समझाता हूं. इन ज्योग्राफी आप पढ़ते हैं दैट प्लांट्स डिराइव देयर न्यूट्रिएंट्स फ्रॉम सॉइल, सिंपल. सो बेसिकली व्हाट हैपेंस इज दैट एज वाटर परकोलेट्स डाउनवर्ड, पानी नीचे नीचे जाता है, बाय कैपिलरी एक्शन न्यूट्रिएंट्स कीप कमिंग टू द टॉप. न्यूट्रिएंट्स नीचे से ऊपर आते हैं, हमेशा ऐसा होता है. नहीं तो क्या होगा कि आप किसी क्रॉप को ग्रो करो, आफ्टर अ पॉइंट इन द लेवल, मान लीजिए रूट्स यहां तक है, देन ऑल द न्यूट्रिएंट्स विल बी एग्जॉस्टेड, फिर तो प्लांट मर जाएगा. एंड यू आर नॉट एडिंग फर्टिलाइजर. तो कहां से मिलता है प्लांट्स? वेयर डू द प्लांट्स कीप गेटिंग न्यूट्रिएंट्स? फ्रॉम कैपिलरी एक्शन. कैसे? ऊपर से नीचे पानी जाता है, कैपिलरी एक्शन से ऊपर आता है. नाउ परमाफ्रॉस्ट क्या होता है? आई विल एक्सप्लेन. इट इज अ ज्योग्राफिकल टर्म एंड देन यू विल अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई देयर इज लो सॉइल फर्टिलिटी. मान लीजिए दिस इज द सरफेस लेवल. परमाफ्रॉस्ट मींस स्मॉल आइस क्रिस्टल्स स्टार्ट accumulating at the surface. मान लीजिए ऐसा है. एंड सॉइल में छोटे छोटे क्रैक्स होते हैं जहां से पानी नीचे जाता है. वहां पर भी द सॉइल, द सबस्ट्रेटम सॉइल हैज फ्रोजन, आइस क्रिस्टल्स जम गया है. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दिस पानी नीचे जाएगा नहीं और ये ऊपर आएगा नहीं. सॉइल फर्टिलिटी विल बी ऑन द लोअर साइड. समझ गया? So temperature also affects the fertility of soil. It is a geographical concept. So यहां पर problems बहुत हैं. एक तो feudalism है. We know that in feudalism, the feudal lords सब कुछ ले लेते थे. Mostly the, whatever was cultivated was grown or came out was taken. और उसके अलावा this. So there was a two crop system. Two crop system मतलब that in an year they would grow maximum 2 crops. And if this is your agricultural field, so they would keep almost half of the field as fallow. You understand what is fallow? What do you mean by fallow? Uncultivable. Why would you keep it uncultivable? They would keep it uncultivable because they know that they have to allow the soil to heal. अगर आप पूरी soil पे खेती कर दोगे तो next season में the entire soil is unsuitable because it is not fertile. So in cases of those agricultural land where the fertility is low, continuous cultivation is never done. आप एक बार कल्टीवेशन करते हैं, एक सीजन छोड़ देते हैं, फिर कल्टीवेशन करते हैं, फिर छोड़ देते हैं. You allow it greater time. And on one half they will grow say rye or barley, कुछ भी ग्रो करो, एक चीज ग्रो करो, और wheat. उसके अगले सीजन में which part of the soil will be fallow? ये वाला, और यहां पर आप ये ग्रो करोगे. So because of this 45 to 50% of the land was uncultivable. And in two crop system there was low agricultural yield. ठीक. So we are seeing what are the problems associated with European agriculture. Climatic factors, geographical factors, and then they did not have good agricultural tools also. आप पढ़ोगे that during this period the only tool that they had was wooden plow. प्लाव तो समझते हो आप लोग, हल. Now in Europe there is another problem. And that problem is animal resource. इंडिया में एक एनिमल है which has been worshipped from the beginning as a symbol of fertility. Which animal is that? Humped bull. Cow नहीं है. If you see in the Harappan seals, it is not the depiction of cow, it is Nandi Maharaj, humped bull. And you know why humped bull has been worshipped since ancient civilization? Because humped bull enabled and facilitated in plowing of soil. खेती करने में बहुत हेल्प करता था. So one of the reasons why in India cultivation was less labor intensive is because of humped bull. समझ रहे हैं? One of the reasons why Buddhism became popular in India is because Buddhism stopped animal sacrifices in the Vedic times or the Vedic rituals. Vedic rituals में ऑक्सन की भी बलि दी जाती थी. यूरोप में जो ऑक्स है ना उसका हम्प नहीं होता है. So one of the reasons why in Europe slavery was there, why there was so much of exploitation of manual labor is because geographical conditions were not in their favor. हमारे यहाँ इतनी दिक्कतें थी नहीं. In our country we were blessed with 8-9 months of sunshine. We had a very fertile land. After a point of time we started using iron tools and we had humped bull. So because there was use of wooden plow and slaves were used, slaves or manual labor, were used for plowing or tilling of land. लिखो, tilling आप समझते हो? Tilling of land means you prepare a soil to do that. So in Europe you see that till 5th to 9th century there was climatic condition. अब इसमें किसी का प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. This is something that is भगवान की माया. Now guys we'll see change in climatic condition. यहां ही लिख लो. From 11th century. We see change in climatic condition from 11th century. Change. We see warmer winters, लिखिए. Warmer winters, prolonged summers, warmer winters, prolonged summers, improving soil fertility. अब तो permafrost तो रहेगा नहीं because it will melt. Improving soil fertility. Along with the use of iron plow, so I repeat, warmer winters, prolonged summers, 7 to 8 months of sunshine, अब ज्यादा समय है आपके पास, improving soil fertility, along with the use of iron plow, enabled the peasants to switch to 3 crop pattern. Enabled them to switch to 3 crop pattern. पहले एक साल में कितने क्रॉप्स होते थे? 2. Now they will have 3 crop pattern. If this is your agricultural field, one part में आप मान लीजिए crop 1 लगा दिया, then you have crop 2. फिर से एक पार्ट को कितना क्या रखा? फैलो. But this is now has reduced to 30%. कई बार crop 2 used to be lentils. You understand what is lentils? What is lentils? Pulses. So and फिर रोटेट कर रहे हैं, आप रोटेट कर रहे हैं, तो एक बार में आप कितने क्रॉप्स लगा रहे हैं? लगभग 3. So because of the 3 crop pattern we see increase in agricultural produce or increase in agricultural yield. Because the climate was on the favorable side, climates भी थोड़ा सा favorable हुआ. So more and more forests were also cut to bring it under cultivation. So changes are happening in European agriculture. And when there is increase in agricultural produce, कभी भी कहीं भी उसका क्या असर होता है? What is the impact of increase in agricultural produce? What do you interpret when there is increase in agricultural produce? What is going to be the impact of it? सबसे पहले population growth है ना जी. Population growth will happen, and more population growth, there is more demand. Common sense है. Agricultural produce very important. Second, it also gives rise to trade and commerce. Growth of trade and commerce. ठीक है. So European agriculture is going to witness a change. But during the first half, at least from 5th to 9th century, it was a problematic time. Why? because the climate was not in their favor, apart from the feudal exploitation. Next thing that we are going to focus upon is the issue of church, क्योंकि हमने चर्च के बारे में बहुत बात की है. We have focused so much about the issues associated with the church. So now we will bring the church into perspective. Because what we have seen is that after the fall of Roman Empire, we see that the position of the king has become weaker or stronger. In feudalism, the position of the king is weak or strong? Weak. He is weak. He is militarily dependent upon the feudal lord. उसके पास अपना लैंड और अपना आर्मी बहुत कम है. He is dependent upon the feudal lord. And that was the time when more than the king who became powerful, church. Church became powerful. So we are going to see Christianity. यहां से शुरू करते हैं पूरी कहानी. We'll see Christianity. Christianity, we all know. How did it come up? Jesus was declared and was established and was accepted as the final messenger of God, Son of God. And after Jesus, this religion became formalized. Jesus के बाद. And to promote Christianity, the institution of church came into picture. Church is not only a place of worship, but church is also an institution which will promote the propagation of Christianity. Christian beliefs को spread करने के लिए. But gradually over a period of time, the church became very powerful, even more powerful than the kings. Now the question is, what led to the power of the church? How did church become so powerful? What contributed to the supremacy of the church? Yes, guys. And याद रखिएगा, all this that we are going to discuss and we are discussing is in the West, not the Byzantine Empire. समझ रहे हैं? ये हम सारा किधर पढ़ रहे हैं? इधर. So how did the church become so powerful? क्या लगता है आपको? Why did people accept and do everything that the church used to say? Okay, fair enough. When there is no one, there is God. So there was no God in the previous times? Okay. Language, क्या language बताइए? देखिए, ठीक है. Church was the sole interpreter of Bible. यहां से शुरू कीजिए. Bible is considered as the book which will help you to attain salvation, which will help you to overcome your evils, which will land you in heaven. ये बात है. This is the word of God. But the problem is that Bible was in which language? Latin. And Latin was understood by the few. What made the Brahmins so powerful in ancient India? Because they were the interpreter of texts which were in Sanskrit. Simple. Linguistic power. Second, the church created a fear psychosis. लोग जो है of hell. That was the time when the people were less concerned about their world, or now they are more concerned about what will happen after death. The church used to link everything with divine. During the Dark Ages, the philosophy was controlled by the church. Everything was linked to divine, Bhagwan, God. Why this is happening? God. Why you are suffering? God. Why somebody is happy? God. So church ने mind control कर लिया था. एक simple बात समझो. Power कोई कैसे पावरफुल बनता है? हाउ डज समबडी बिकम पावरफुल? देयर आर थ्री सोर्सेस ऑफ पावर: मसल, मनी, माइंड. मसल, आर्मी; मनी, अंबानी. यू हैव वेल्थ. इफ यू हैव वेल्थ तो आप पावरफुल है. माइंड, रजनीश, ओशो. नहीं. हाउ डू बाबाज बिकम सो पावरफुल? They control the mind of the people. माइंड का मतलब हिप्नोटाइज नहीं है, लोग मानते कि जो वो कह रहे हैं वही सही है. चर्च कंट्रोल द माइंड ऑफ द पीपल. दैट इज हाउ इट बिकेम पावरफुल. ठीक है. नाउ द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज कि लोगों का तो समझ में आता है, व्हाई डिड द किंग एक्सेप्ट द अथॉरिटी ऑफ द चर्च? आप समझ में आ गया? पीपल एक्सेप्टिंग द अथॉरिटी ऑफ द चर्च समझ में आता है. Why did the people, the kings accept the authority of the church? The king legitimized the position of the king through divine rights theory. I'll explain what is the meaning of this. It legitimized, मतलब it declared that this king is the right king. चर्च ने एक नया थ्योरी निकाला, डिवाइन राइट्स थ्योरी. Church declared that the king is not a person who has emerged in this position by his own will or by his own potential, because God wants him to become the king. So basically the king is representative God's will on earth. It is through the king that the God is ruling over the land. Church ने कहा yes, हमको पता है, God wants him to become the king. So king was also dependent upon the चर्च. राजा करेगा क्या? He does not have money. Trade and commerce is on a decline. He does not have an army. He fears that the feudal lords can any day rebel against him. डर है उसको. So the only way by which the king can win the loyalty of the people is if somebody who is actually powerful or who is actually more acceptable says so, and who is that? Church. सो कंप्लीट पावर तभी आता है जब आपके पास तीनों हो, मनी, मसल एंड माइंड. आप इंडियन हिस्ट्री में देखो फिर से, अशोक के पास सब कुछ था. ही हैड एंटायर इंडियन सब कॉन्टिनेंट. अखंड भारत का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है, इट इज बेस्ड ऑन द एक्सटेंट ऑफ मौर्यन एम्पायर इन द टाइम ऑफ अशोक. ही हैड अ लॉट ऑफ वेल्थ, पैसा भी बहुत था, बट फिर भी अशोक को पता था that if I have to be supremely powerful, then I should also have the undivided and unflinching loyalty of the people. So Ashok ने एक टाइटल अडॉप्ट किया, देव नाम पियदशी, beloved of the gods. क्या जरूरत थी उसको? Because he was a visionary, उसको पता था. अकबर also had everything, wealth, army, but Akbar also wanted to rise above this. He wanted to complete his power dimension. So अकबर कि जो हिस्टोरियन थे अबुल फजल, वो लिखते हैं इन हिज हिस्टोरिकल वर्क अकबर नामा दैट द डिवाइन लाइट एमनेट्स फ्रॉम द एम्परर. आप पढ़ते हो दैट ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ अकबर, आपने देखा होगा ऋतिक रोशन, इन द मॉर्निंग लोग इन द मॉर्निंग यूज्ड टू कम फॉर सजदा, दैट इफ यू सी द एम्परर इन द मॉर्निंग आपका दिन अच्छा जाएगा. सो व्हाई? कंप्लीट डायमेंशन ऑफ पावर. समझ रहे हैं आप? So this is how. अब चर्च इतना पावरफुल बन गया, then the church started abusing its position. Now we'll see the problems associated with the church. That is where we will see the thing will get aggravated. We see the problems or abuses by the church. What are the abuses by the church? Or how we see the church has abused, or in what way the church has misused its position of power. है ना? So guys, to save time, we can use the handout also. पेज नंबर 4 लास्ट, फटाफट देखिए, मैं आपको फटाफट बता देता हूं एंड देन वील मूव. देखिए लास्ट में लिखा होगा अब्यूजेस बाय द कैथोलिक चर्च. कैन यू सी दैट? फॉर ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स आई विल जस्ट राइट abuses by the Catholic Church. So which are the abuses means how the church has misused and abused its powerful position. ठीक है? So one of that is political interference. The church used to abuse or used to interfere. Pope, आप पढ़ते हो, उसके बगल में लिख लो that the Roman Pope was a very very powerful political figure in Europe, very powerful. He even controlled, a fair area of land. Roman Pope, or the institution of Pope, was very powerful. The church also had judicial powers, ecclesiastical courts. The church established courts to try heretics. वहीं पे लिख लो बगल में. Ecclesiastical means religious courts. Heretics क्या होता है? Who are heretics? What is heretics? समझिए आराम से. Heresy का मतलब होता है, heresy means a religious crime. If you have gone against the dictate or against whatever the church has said, or if you are an enemy of the religion, that crime is called as heresy. अधर्म किया है आपने. And those who are perpetrators of that are called as heretics. आप पढ़ते हो that in the past the church used to sentence many people to death. Jews को बहुत मारा जाता था. Many women were branded as or labeled as witchcraft चलता था. Witch hunting used to be practiced. गांव में कभी जब epidemic आते थे, whenever there was सूखा और एनी डिजीज, तो लोग चर्च से पूछते थे ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है, तो बोलते थे कि गॉड इज अनहैप्पी. व्हाई गॉड इज अनहैप्पी? कई बार कहते थे इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ दैट पर्सन, इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ दैट कम्युनिटी. सो ऑल दिस यूज्ड टू हैपन. सो पॉलिटिकल इंटरफेरेंस, जुडिशियल पावर्स वाज देयर. नेक्स्ट, चर्च के पास बहुत लैंड था. चर्च वाज अ सपोर्टर ऑफ फ्यूडलिज्म, करेगा भी. एंड चर्च ऑल्सो हैड अ लॉट ऑफ लैंड अंडर इट्स कंट्रोल. बहुत पैसा था चर्च के पास. बट क्या चर्च टैक्स देता था? No. Despite having a lot of land under its control, which it received by donations, still the church never paid any single penny as tax to the king. किसी को टैक्स नहीं देता था. And not only did not pay tax to the king, उल्टा church used to collect tax, tithe from the peasants. Church used to collect a tax that is tithe from the peasants. Tithe is 1/10 of income. From the peasants. अब सवाल उठता है, how can you collect tax from the peasants? Or by what authority or by what logic can you collect tax from the peasants? देखिए मैं बताता हूं. Can you guess? टैक्स लोगे तुम. दक्षिणा इज वॉलेंटरी, इट्स नॉट मैंडेटरी. टैक्स इज मैंडेटरी. दक्षिणा इज डोनेशन. पाप के लिए टैक्स दोगे, और जो नहीं कर रहा है वो no, that is church's own land. I am a peasant, you are the church, you are collecting from me whatever I produce, uska 1/10. Church used to say that all the land belongs to God. Basically it is not your land, it is of God. So aren't you liable to pay a rent to God for using his resources? आप उनके खेत पे खेती कर रहे हैं तो आपको गॉड को कुछ तो देना होगा. बट गॉड तो आएंगे नहीं कलेक्ट करने. Who is custodian of God's property on earth? Church. So they used to collect. उन्होंने कहा कि आपको देना पड़ेगा गॉड को कर. God is the ultimate king. Did you understand? Now there was a very controversial practice, that is the letter of indulgence. ये है वो पाप वाली बात जो आप कह रहे थे. This is going to create a lot of controversy. Now, what is the letter of indulgence? In those times, सबसे ज्यादा डर लोगों को लगता था from hell. Church had come up with all types of descriptions that एक बहुत बड़ी कढ़ाई होगी जिसमें ऑयल उबल रहा है, आपको उसमें पकाया जाएगा. There will be devils, सुनते ना आप, है ना? There will be a river. हम लोग के यहाँ भी है. We read about वैतरनी. So लोग डरते थे hell जाने. And that is why the way to avoid going to hell is by not committing sin. पाप मत करो. Because at your death, an account of your punya, good deeds and bad deeds will be taken. So you will suffer your bad deeds first, and then on the basis of good deeds you will go to heaven. But मान लीजिए फिर भी पाप हो ही गया. It is not possible. So in Christianity there is a ritual called as confession. You confess before a priest. You confess that, okay, Father, I have done this mistake. In the earlier times, the priest used to tell that, okay, to come out of the sin, you have to do this penance, prashchit. But many times this used to be a tedious task. एक pope आए who came up with this idea that there is an alternative to come out of a sin, and that is by purchasing a certificate, and that certificate is called as letter of indulgence. So basically, Father, I have spoken a lie, 10 rupees. I have done a murder, no worry, 1,000 rupees. Certificate. So basically, it was a way by which the rich could get away by doing any sin by purchasing this. And you know what is most shocking? The most shocking part of it is that this was not mentioned in the Bible. और ये झूठ कहते थे बाइबल में लिखा है. बाद में हम देखेंगे that this, when Bible was read, was translated into multiple languages and was read, then in 1517 a German priest would publish a pamphlet, 95 theses, हम देखेंगे आगे, that would give rise to a movement known as Protestantism. चर्च की बहुत criticism होगी बाद में. The church used to, you will see that there was a lot of corruption also. Corruption among higher clergy. Clergy का मतलब क्या होता है? Members of the church are called as clergy. जहां पैसा होगा वहां corruption होगा. Wherever there is wealth, there will be corruption. So now this is common. So the question is that what was the source of wealth for the church? How did they collect so much of, कहां से पैसा आता था? One is tithe, then was letter of indulgence, नहीं, then land, चर्च के पास अपना लैंड था, and then they used to charge fees for various rituals. The church used to charge fees for various rituals. Fees. One ritual was very famous, was baptism. सुना है? नहीं सुना तो अभी सुनिए. Baptism. What is baptism? डुबकी लगाना? नहीं नहीं नहीं. बैप्टिज्म क्या है? कॉमन बताओ. देखो मैं बताता हूं. Baptism is a ritual or a ceremony by which a person becomes Christian. Simple. You become a Christian only after baptism or when you are baptized. Generally, it happens that when a child is born, then the parents take that child to the church, and then the priest, पहले डुबकी नहीं हल्का सा डुबोते थे. डुबकी लोग बच्चा मर जाएगा जी. बट लेटर स्प्रिंकल करते थे होली वाटर. अब ये क्यों हुआ मैं आपको ये भी बता देता हूं. इट वॉज सेड दैट व्हेन अ पर्सन इज क्रिश्चियन and when the person dies, then an account is taken of your good deeds and bad deeds, and then you are placed in hell and heaven. But उस समय बहुत बच्चे at the time of birth they used to die, still birth used to happen. तो लोग बोले इनका क्या, इन्होंने तो कुछ किया ही नहीं है, वेयर विल दे गो? तो चर्च को समझ में नहीं आया। चर्च ने कहा नहीं नहीं, दे आर नॉट क्रिश्चियन, अ पर्सन बिकम्स क्रिश्चियन ओनली व्हेन अ पर्सन इज बैप्टाइज्ड। बाद में when Christianity traveled to many parts of the world and there was religious conversion, this was done by a ceremony known as baptism. समझ में आ गया? ये है बैप्टिज्म। सिमिलरली यू सी मैरिज, फ्यूनरल, बहुत पैसा था। यस, दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई रिलीजन बिकम्स करप्ट। बुद्धिज्म क्यों डिक्लाइन किया? करप्शन। क्रिश्चियनिटी ऑल्सो। सो वी सी दैट देयर इज सो मच ऑफ करप्शन। फिर बहुत से डोनेशन आते थे बाय थ्योरी ऑफ सैक्रामेंट। They used to receive donation. They used to say that if you give donations to church, then you will receive God's grace or God's blessings. ठीक है? Tail is a land tax. Tail is a land tax. Somebody has asked. आपके किसी दोस्त ने पूछा what is tail? Tail is a land tax that you pay to the king. ये किसको देते हैं? राजा को. Tithe is something that you give to the church. So guys, to sum up, we have seen that the Dark Ages is a problematic time in Europe where the climatic condition is harsh, agricultural growth was limited, the peasants were exploited by the feudal lords, the king is weak, is dependent upon the feudal lords, there is a lot of political instability, trade and commerce has declined, and people, their mind has been captured by whom? Church. And the king are also not happy, but they are helpless before the church. ठीक? So this was a very bad phase of Europe, especially from 5th to 10th century. From 5th to 10th century was a problematic time. Now we will see transition from 11th century. चीजें बदलेंगी. ठीक है? We will see transition from 11th century. Because if things don't improve, AC temperature. Oh, that's okay. Change कीजिए temperature. ये तो AC temperature. Transition from 11th century. ध्यान दीजिए, please don't talk. So we will see that changes would happen from 11th century and eventually we'll reach Renaissance. समझ रहे हैं? What all changes we will see? Change in climatic conditions. ये तो हमने कर ही लिया already. Climatic conditions towards warmer size. है ना? ये तो हमने किया था ना अभी. And this led to the growth of trade and commerce. But guys, if you ask me, what has led to the transformation of Europe? यूरोप में इतना कुछ खराब था. There was so much of problem in Europe for the last 1.5 hours or more. We have been discussing only problems. Then how did Europe become so strong? Or why did certain countries of the world become so strong? And how did they come out of their problems? What was the most important factor? Then I would say that in one word, that factor is commercial revolution. If you ask me, what led to the transformation in European history, that factor is called as commercial revolution. That factor is called as commercial revolution. 11th to 18th century. लिखिए क्लाइम and then I'll explain. Commercial revolution is associated with the growth and expansion of trade and commerce. Within Europe within Europe and also other parts of the world. It witnessed the revival of trade through the Mediterranean sea route comma ancient Silk Route. You are aware ancient Silk Route? Ancient Silk Route, along with the discovery of new trade routes through the Cape of Good Hope. What is the Cape of Good Hope? चलिए अभी बताते हैं. Through the Cape of Good Hope to the east, along with the discovery of New World. What is New World? We will discuss. न्यू वर्ल्ड का मतलब है नॉर्थ अमेरिका, साउथ अमेरिका. लोगों को पता ही नहीं था कि देयर इज समथिंग लाइक नॉर्थ अमेरिका, साउथ अमेरिका until this discovery was made by Christopher Columbus. There was no awareness. That is why later it was given the name New World. Old world क्या है? Europe, Africa and Asia. मतलब that world which is known to the people is old world. What is new world? Which is not known. So North America, South America and everything that you see there is the new world. So we see the discovery of the new world. This later gave rise to the Columbian Exchange. Across Atlantic Ocean. Columbian Exchange across Atlantic Ocean. I'll again explain every word. Columbian Exchange along Atlantic Ocean. Commercial revolution, change the paragraph and write. Commercial revolution led to the revival of urban centers or urbanization. De-urbanization का मतलब था decline of urbanization. Here we'll see re-urbanization, revival of urban centers. So it led to the revival of urban centers, in bracket write first in Italy. We'll see the revival of urban centers in Italy, which are the earliest towns to emerge: Venice, Genoa, Milan. And why? Because trade and commerce यहाँ पर आया, which led to the revival of trade and commerce, urban centers, first in Italy. Rise of traders and merchants. लिखा? Did you miss? Rise of traders and merchants, and eventually the middle class. मिडिल क्लास में ब्रैकेट में लिखिए एजेंट्स ऑफ रेवोल्यूशन. मिडिल क्लास, प्लीज राइट इन ब्रैकेट एजेंट्स ऑफ रेवोल्यूशन. ठीक है, एजेंट्स ऑफ रेवोल्यूशन. देखिए, यू हैव रिटन अ लॉट, नाउ आई विल एक्सप्लेन. दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. कॉमर्शियल रेवोल्यूशन का मतलब है that revolution brought about by trade and commerce. Revolution का क्या मतलब है? What do you understand by revolution? Revolution means any change which is sudden but has a long term impact. That is revolution. That is called a revolution. So we are seeing that in Europe, and in not only in Europe but in the world, we will see that revolution will be brought about by what factor? Trade and commerce. Trade and commerce कहां grow करेगा? Within Europe and between Europe and Oriental world. किस रूट से? एक तो मेडिटेरेनियन सी रूट, सिल्क रूट, एंड देन आफ्टर द कैप्चर ऑफ कॉन्स्टेंटिनोपल, अभी मैं बताऊंगा आपको 1453, व्हेन द ट्रेड वाया दिस रूट वाज नॉट पॉसिबल, तो ये लोग नया ट्रेड रूट खोजेंगे, स्पेनिश एंड द पोर्चुगीज. किधर से? साउथ अफ्रीका के नीचे से जाएंगे इधर. बट वाइल दे वर लुकिंग फॉर डिस्कवरिंग न्यू ट्रेड रूट्स टू द ईस्ट, they accidentally stumbled upon a new vast land, North and South America, that would give rise to a new trade. इस बार ट्रेड इधर नहीं होगा, ट्रेड होगा इधर, to the west. Across which ocean? Atlantic. This exchange of people, goods and services across the Atlantic Ocean, this transatlantic trade was given a very famous name called as Columbian Exchange after Christopher Columbus. जबकि सिर्फ ट्रेड नहीं है, लोग भी इधर उधर आएंगे. जैसे अफ्रीका से अमेरिका क्या जाएंगे? स्लेव्स. वी विल डिस्कस स्लेव ट्रेड. पीपल फ्रॉम यूरोप विल कम एंड सेटल इन अमेरिका, है ना, अराइवल ऑफ यूरोपियन सेटलर्स, एंड फ्रॉम हियर गुड्स विल गो टू द यूरोप. अब पढ़ते हो दैट मेनी क्रॉप्स अराइव्ड इन इंडिया आफ्टर द डिस्कवरी ऑफ न्यू वर्ल्ड. पोटैटो, आलू. वी आर वेरी फॉन्ड ऑफ पोटैटो. But do you know potato was not indigenous to India? Tomato, pineapple, red chili, all these crops कहां से आया है? From New World, from North and South America. Who brought these crops in India? Portuguese. Tobacco, तंबाकू, खैनी. Jahangir was very fond of it, tobacco. Mughals started cultivating this. कहां से आया? उधर से. So we will see that in the process of expansion of trade and commerce, there was an accidental discovery of the new world, where later the indigenous people or the native would be subordinated, and who will dominate it? Europeans, European settlers. And now, because of all this, we will see the rise of trade and traders and merchants. We will see the revival of urbanization. और इन सब में क्या डिक्लाइन करेगा? फ्यूडलिज्म विल डिक्लाइन. सो कॉमर्शियल रेवोल्यूशन कंट्रीब्यूटेड टू द डिक्लाइन ऑफ फ्यूडलिज्म, बिकॉज वेरेवर देयर इज ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स, इट विल गिव राइज टू अ मोनेटाइज्ड इकोनॉमी, कैश बेस्ड इकोनॉमी आएगा. हु विल बिकम पावरफुल? स्टेट. किंग्स जो पहले कमजोर हो गए थे फिर से पावरफुल बनेंगे. दे वुड ऑल्सो प्रमोट ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स बिकॉज दे वुड नीड अ लॉट ऑफ वेल्थ, क्योंकि उनको आर्मी मेंटेन करनी थी. But who will suffer? Feudalism will decline. और इन सब के बीच में एक ऐसा डेवलपमेंट होगा, and that development is the rise of middle class. हमेशा याद रखना that in the world revolution has been brought not by the upper class, not by the lower section, but by which section? Middle class. American Revolution, middle class. French Revolution, middle class. Indian freedom struggle, middle class. इंडिया में UPSC revolution, middle class. सो रेवोल्यूशन सोसाइटी में कौन लाता है? मिडिल क्लास. सो फॉर एनी रेवोल्यूशन टू हैपन, हमेशा देखना किसी भी सोसाइटी में रेवोल्यूशन के पहले मिडिल क्लास का इमर्जेंस होगा. यहां पर आएगा इन द सिटीज. सो नाउ द क्वेश्चन इज व्हाट वर द फैक्टर्स विच लेड टू द कॉमर्शियल रेवोल्यूशन. ठीक है, कैसे आया? सो व्हाट आर द फैक्टर्स विच हैज गिवन राइज टू दिस? So I'll explain one by one the factors. I will not dictate because again it is mentioned. सबसे पहला है crusades. Very important. 11th to 13th century. Crusades सुना है? व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय क्रूसेड्स? बताइए। Religious wars. So crusades are religious wars, holy wars between Christians and Muslims. यही है ना? Why? The question is why? For control over Jerusalem, पहला, ठीक, and second, for evicting Muslims. Evicting means to kick them out from Roman territories. So in the last map that we had opened up, I showed you how the Islamized or how the tribes, Arabs, Moors had captured territories which had earlier belonged to them. So they wanted to free their land, which was in the past a Roman territory, and they also wanted to re-establish control over Jerusalem. ठीक? एक war नहीं, बहुत से wars हुए थे. This led to a number of campaigns in Europe, in Arabic Peninsula. Before we go to these wars and what is the impact of crusade, we are not interested in the war. We are basically interested, or we are more focused on the impact of crusades. But before we understand crusade, I want you to understand a basic concept of Abrahamic religion. Abrahamic religions. So, Abrahamic religion किनको कहा जाता है? So, there are three religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Means I would not say यही तीन है, but they are the major three Abrahamic religions. Now the question is, why are they called as Abrahamic religion? है ना? आप ये सब पढ़ते हो आजकल, Abrahamic religion at war. So why are they called as Abrahamic religion? Okay, बताइए, why are they called as Abrahamic religion? देखिए, मैं बताता हूं. In the ancient times, आराम से समझो. In the ancient times, there was not a clear picture कि भगवान कितने हैं और कौन हैं. Like Romans had their own gods, God of thunder, God of rain, है ना? God of mountains, अपने अपने gods थे. Greeks के अपने भगवान. So in the ancient times, you read in India also, Vedic times में, early Vedic age, there was a concept of polytheism. Every god had a specific jurisdiction. हर god एक particular area में होते थे, and their powers were also limited. Then came a great prophet or messenger who was called as Abraham. Abraham ने कहा कि above all these gods, there is a supreme God, and he is the true God, the only God which we should actually worship. So all these religions believe or trace their root idea from the teachings of Abraham. समझ गए? ये मानते हैं कि इब्राहिम ने जो बात कही वही सही है. That there is one true God. And that is why Abrahamic religions are believers of monotheism. God is one, and God may have multiple ways of communicating or interacting with us. ठीक है? All these religions, they are very similar to each other. हाँ, इनका time period अलग अलग है. जुडाइज्म इन सब में सबसे पहले आया है, द रिलीजन ऑफ जूज. द रूट्स ऑफ जुडाइज्म गोज टू 3500 BC. कहा जाता है कि जुडाइज्म में, although they believe that the Jews believe that we are descendants of Abraham, हमारे ग्रेट फादर हैं इब्राहिम, but it was Musa, who is considered as its founder. It was Musa because the Jews were slaves of the Egyptian pharaohs. इजिप्ट में pharaohs थे जिन्होंने पिरामिड्स बनाया. इजिप्ट में so they used to enslave whom? Jews. किसने आजाद कराया? Moses. But they also consider who is the first prophet? Abraham. उसके बाद और भी prophets आए. Abraham के दो लड़के आइजैक और इस्माइल, and two religions are in conflict over who is the next prophet. Jews believe that Isaac, Muslim believe that Ismail. Muslims also consider Abraham as, their, I would say, their first prophet. First prophet तो नहीं, but their patriarch. वहां से religion का शुरुआत होता है. Christians भी मानते हैं. Christians मानते हैं कि इब्राहिम से पहले भी एक आए थे एडम, जहां से who is the father of all human beings. बट ये सब मानते हैं कि हम सबकी टीचिंग्स किसकी बिलीफ सिस्टम पे है? इब्राहिम. They are called as Abrahamic religion. All the Abrahamic religion, besides our monotheism, believing in one God, formless God, they don't have a concept of, worshipping or putting God in a picture. हाँ, ये बात अलग है, जीसस क्राइस्ट वॉज बॉर्न इन अ ह्यूमन फॉर्म, सो जीसस को वर्शिप करते हैं. इन भगवान को आप देखना इन तीनों रिलीजन में लाइट के फॉर्म में दिखाता है. इन इस्लाम इट इज नूर. ठीक. जुडाइज्म पहले आया. क्रिश्चियनिटी, we'll see that after the birth of Jesus Christ it became formalized, and then Islam in 7th century. तीनों में सबसे बाद they all have a concept of one scripture. बहुत से they all have. अब the question is that अगर इतना कुछ common है, that there are so much of similarities there, their prophets are same. Prophet का मतलब है messenger. God used to communicate with the people not directly but through messengers, prophets. If there is so much of similarity between them, then why are they in conflict? आपको पता ही है that in the history of mankind, Jews, Christians and Muslims have been at conflict with each other. ठीक? So why are they at conflict with each other? What is the root of conflict? First is that the root of conflict is the interpretation of prophet, final prophet. समझिए फिर से. Jews कहते हैं इब्राहिम पहले मैसेंजर थे. इब्राहिम के बाद अब आए आइजैक. Then we find that there are so many. फिर आए Moses. And then they also accept that Jesus is the prophet. But they don't accept Jesus as the final prophet. Jews believe that Jesus was also a prophet, but the final prophet is yet to arrive. भविष्य में आएंगे. He's yet to arrive, not has arrived. Christians believe that the final prophet is Jesus. इसके बाद अब कोई prophet नहीं आएंगे. After this, God will directly come and will judge all of us based on our actions on the day of judgment. इसीलिए आप देखो Christians अपने जो डिसीज्ड हैं उनकी बॉडी को बरी करते हैं, बिकॉज दे बिलीव दैट ऑन द डे ऑफ जजमेंट गॉड विल रिजरेक्ट एंड विल डू जस्टिस. ठीक, ये ऐसा मानते हैं. इस्लाम कहता है कि जीसस इज नॉट द फाइनल प्रॉफिट. हु इज द फाइनल प्रॉफिट? प्रॉफिट मोहम्मद. फाइनल प्रॉफिट का मतलब वो है बिकॉज गॉड यूज्ड टू गिव मैसेजेस इन पार्ट्स. कभी कुछ मैसेज दिया, कभी कुछ दिया. समझ गए? Final prophet is a prophet who gave a complete message, जिसने सब कुछ बताया, who answered all the questions, what happens after death, सारी चीजें बताई, how you should live your life, what God expects from you, everything. After this, there is no additional thing that God has to say, syllabus complete. So then they also believe in a concept of day of judgment, उसको कहते हैं कयामत की रात. So over the interpretation of final prophet इनके में झगड़ा चल रहा है. Jews कहते हैं कि आपने सारा आइडिया हमसे चुराया है. So they believe in this, number one. They are also fighting for the Holy Land. They are also fighting for the control over Holy Land. And what is the Holy Land? Conflict over Jerusalem. क्यों लड़ रहे हैं? They are fighting for the conflict over Jerusalem. ये तो सुना होगा ना आपने, आपको पता होनी चाहिए हिस्ट्री. चलिए मैं बताता हूं. ज्यूज की बात करते हैं, ठीक है. कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ओवर जेरूसलम. ज्यूज कहते हैं दैट दिस इज द प्लेस ऑफ आवर बर्थ. मतलब हम एक्चुअली व्हेन वी केम हियर, मोसेस हमको यहां लेकर आए. एंड व्हाई डिड मोसेस ब्रिंग अस हियर फ्रॉम इजिप्ट? बिकॉज गॉड ने मोसेस को मैसेज दिया था. गॉड टोल्ड देम दैट टू मोसेस कि इनको लेकर आओ. एंड इट इज हियर दैट आवर फर्स्ट टेंपल, सोलोमन टेंपल वॉज कंस्ट्रक्टेड. हमारा पहला टेंपल एक राजा था, हमारा डेविड ने बनाया था. एंड इट इज हियर दैट द फाइनल मैसेज विल बी डिलीवर्ड टू अस बाय द लेटर प्रॉफिट. तो हम तो हमेशा से यहीं रहे हैं, आप बाद में आए. इट इज आवर प्लेस फ्रॉम वेयर वी हैव बीन किक्ड आउट फर्स्ट बाय द रोमन्स एंड देन बाय द ऑटोमन्स. तो दिस इज आवर प्लान. ये ऐसा कहते हैं. क्रिश्चियंस, इन द क्रिश्चियंस बाइबल there is a reference of Jerusalem at multiple occasions. Jesus का जन्म यहां नहीं हुआ था. Jesus was not born here, but Jesus was crucified. Crucifixion समझते हैं? In Jerusalem. And after crucifixion, on the third day, Jesus reappeared. जिसको ये लोग सब सेलिब्रेट करते हैं ना. So Jesus reappeared and then gave his message and left. तो जीसस ने इस जगह को चुना था. And Jesus revealed his divine avatar, because only a person who is God-like can rise after death. So this is a very important place. This was the place which is also linked with Jesus' birth. आपने लिखी, मैंने नोट्स में लिखा है. तो ये कहते हैं कि हमारा भी होली लैंड है. This belongs to us. अब बात करते हैं इस्लाम. इस्लाम में there is a concept of 3 holy lands. पहला है मक्का. मक्का इज द प्लेस ऑफ बर्थ ऑफ प्रॉफिट साहब, ठीक, जहां उनका जन्म हुआ. दैट इज द होली लैंड. सेकेंड इज मेदीना. मेदीना इज द प्लेस वेयर प्रॉफिट हैड माइग्रेटेड विथ हिज फॉलोवर्स इन 786 उनके कैलेंडर के हिसाब से. सो मक्का से मदीना माइग्रेशन. व्हाई? बिकॉज पीपल और द रूलर्स ऑफ दैट रीजन वर टेरिफाइड विद द ग्रोइंग पॉपुलैरिटी ऑफ प्रॉफिट मोहम्मद. उनको लगा ये कैसे इतना मजबूत हो गया, हाउ ही हैज बिकम सो पॉपुलर. एंड देन द थर्ड होली श्राइन इज जेरूसलम, वेयर दे बिलीव दैट प्रॉफिट मोहम्मद हैड ट्रैवल्ड ओवरनाइट विद द हेल्प ऑफ एन एंजल फ्रॉम मेदीना. मेदीना कहां है? अरब पेनिनसुला में. सो फ्रॉम अरब पेनिनसुला, फ्रॉम सऊदी अरब टू दिस प्लेस टुडे. आज देखिए, दिस प्लेस इज अंडर द कंट्रोल ऑफ इजराइल. एंड हियर he delivered his final message. उन्होंने मैसेज दिया and then he left for जन्नत. So अगर प्रॉफिट मोहम्मद ने इस जगह को चुना है, it means it is special. And that is why to commemorate this, they have a mosque here. Which mosque? समझ में आ गया आपको? So Abrahamic religion में बहुत कुछ सिमिलर है, but they are fighting. And this जेरूसलम was controlled by Byzantines. अगर आप मैप में देखो तो आपको दिख जाएगा जेरूसलम कहां पर है. Byzantines were controlling it, but who captured it from the Byzantines? Ottomans तो बहुत बाद में करेंगे. I'm talking about this period. The Arabs captured it from them. The people who had adopted Islam. Why are they called as Arabs? Why are they called as Arabs? Because they speak which language? Arabic language. So now coming back to the original idea that they wanted to free their land, Jerusalem, from Arabs, and in the process They also wanted to free that land which was controlled by the Arabs from, the Roman territories. इसके लिए बहुत लड़ाइयां हुई. They kept fighting. And the crusades were not fought in one place. The crusades, they were fought in, say, Iberian Peninsula, the crusades were fought in North Africa, Middle East, and then in the Arabic Peninsula. It was fought in the Arabic Peninsula also. ठीक है, लड़ते लड़ते Arabic Peninsula आ गए. Who? The Christians came and started fighting. When they came and they fought in the Arabic Peninsula, they came in contact with the Arab culture. जब ये लड़ते लड़ते यहां पहुंच गए, they came to the Arabic Peninsula, the Europeans who had been seeing so many problems, they saw that how the Arab culture is so refined. कितना पैसा है इनके पास, they are consuming the spices, they know better mathematics. Arabs had learned the decimal system from whom? Indians. So during crusades में लड़ाई चल रही है, but what happened is that they came in contact with the Arabs. They saw that the Arabs wear finest quality of silk and cotton textile, जो कि कहां से ला रहे हैं? East से. So suddenly, because of crusades, we see that there was revival in the demand of Oriental luxury goods. ये soldiers जब यहां लड़ने आते थे, and when some of these soldiers used to go back, they used to speak very highly of the Arabic food, Arabic knowledge, and Arabic dress style. तो church, feudal lords and the kings बोले हमको भी लाके दो. Did you understand? So they said, we also want these goods, because after the decline of Roman Empire, the trade had stopped. So basically what happened because of the crusades, we see the revival in the trade of Oriental luxury goods. Or which route was again opened up? Mediterranean. Arabs को realize हो गया that we had made a mistake by closing the trade routes. Trade चलने दो, because the more trade will happen, पैसा किसको मिलेगा? Tax हमको. So the same Arabs who had closed the trade route initially, because of hostility between the religion, that Arabs have opened up the trade. So one of the factors which led to the revival of trade, इसीलिए आप पढ़ते हो, that is why somewhere we had drawn yes, remember that this route now opened up, और इस region में we see that in this region European and Arab traders used to operate in Indian Ocean region. No. Arabs realized that if more and more trade happens with Europe and say India and Southeast Asia, these traders will pay taxes to them. So they realized the economic benefit. So crusade started as a religious war. But what was the impact of this religious war? Economic. Arabs India में क्या लाते थे? What the Arabs used to bring to India? Horses. There was huge demand of horses in India. Arab traders India में क्या लाते थे? Horses. And what they used to carry from India? Everything else. अब पढ़ते हो ना, पालास, प्रतिहारास, राष्ट्रकूट. So there was huge demand for the Central Asian Arab horses. Horses आते थे. Europeans ये बेचारे किसी तरह से पैसा वैसा लेकर आते थे. Gold फिर भी कम हो गया था. But what happened is that again trade started after 11th century. बाद में Delhi Sultanate will also encourage the trade and commerce. So we see that one factor which is responsible for the commercial revolution is this. Second, increase in agricultural produce. ये तो हमने कर ही रखा है. This led to growth of trade and commerce within Europe. Growth of trade and commerce within Europe. Third, discovery of silver mines. In Europe. So a number of silver mines were discovered in Europe, say in Serbia, Bohemia, etc. सिल्वर माइन से क्या होगा? मोनेटाइज्ड इकोनॉमी है ना. सिल्वर गोल्ड से क्या होगा? करेंसी बेस्ड इकोनॉमी. सो इन द नेक्स्ट क्लास वील पिक इट अप फ्रॉम हियर. वी विल डिस्कस द एंशिएंट सिल्क रूट, then what led to Renaissance, Reformation, and then we will move to the next chapter, that is American Revolution. So today we have tried to understand that how Europe is changing from the Dark Ages and how it is going to move in a progressive direction. So try to read the handouts which is given in a very simpler format. Fine. The handwritten notes are also uploaded on the portal. So whatever suits to you. ठीक है. And yes, it will be uploaded before the class so that you can take. For those who are online students, just wait. You can share your answers on my vajiram.historyoptional@gmail.com. vajiram.historyoptional@gmail.com. So start writing answers gradually as we, and more will progress. We'll have more and more answer writing. Fine. So we'll continue from here in the next class. Today was introductory lecture, so I was trying to make it very basic. Fine. Thank you.